Scary story time on how my best friend tried to steal my baby while I make slime. Disclaimer, this is not my story. I ain't never been pregnant a day in my life. It's literally been forever since I made slime, and you already know. Get your money's worth. And what? Let it drain. Oh my gosh, I put it too close to the edge. This was sent in by a woman named Nevaeh. And like all the disclaimers I do, this is not my story. It was sent in. I cannot tell y'all if it's real or not. Nevaeh is a 23-year-old pregnant woman, and she has this best friend named Ashley. Now, unfortunately, Nevaeh's husband, he gets stationed away from them. He's in the Navy, I believe. So Nevaeh makes the hard decision to move in with her best friend because, you know, it's very hard to be pregnant and do it all on your own. So why not do it with someone who's pregnant like you? So that's exactly what she did. Now, at first, they were taking care of each other at this point. I went to grab the glue and look. Okay. Now, Nevaeh and her best friend met like 3 years ago, and they've been besties and close ever since. And when Nevaeh finally got up the courage to tell her best friend that she was pregnant, her best friend told her, "I'm pregnant too." So they just thought it was the cutest thing. Their babies were going to be born like a week apart, and they were planning everything out. So them moving in together was just like super cute on their part. Unfortunately, Ashley, Nevaeh's best friend, her baby daddy was a one-night stand. But regardless of what it is, Ashley was going to love her baby. Whatever. I can't stop it. My hands are so gluey and sticky. Okay, so basically, yeah. Ashley's baby daddy, he's a one-night stand, but regardless of what it was, she was gonna love her baby regardless if like the daddy was in her life or not. Now, the weeks fast forward and why can't I talk? The weeks fast forward and Nevaeh and Ashley should be around like 23, 24 weeks. And Nevaeh comes home from work early. Ashley is not home yet, and so she immediately goes to the bathroom because, you know, she had to go pee. And in the bathroom, she noticed like a woman's like sanitary product for down there, so like a pad or something. And she was immediately alarmed because it's like, oh my gosh, if you're like bleeding that much, like, is everything okay down there? And this is where she started to piece things together. She noticed that her best friend didn't have like the same cravings that she had. Her best friend didn't have to go pee as frequently as she did. She just had no like pregnancy symptoms whatsoever. So when she went to her next doctor appointment, she asked her doctor, is it normal for a pregnant woman to have no symptoms? And her doctor was like, yeah, every pregnant woman like is different. She ended up like scrapping the thought that her best friend was never pregnant out of her mind. The weeks continue, and it's only getting closer to both of their due dates. Nevaeh's husband is supposed to be like coming back home anytime now, and Ashley got pregnant before Nevaeh did, so her due date was coming way before Nevaeh, like a week or two. As Nevaeh started to hit the 30 weeks mark is when she started to feel like she was having complications with the baby. She was feeling like insane cramping, and one day she could not find her keys for the life of her to drive to the hospital. So she calls up Ashley. She's like, hey Ashley, I need your help. I need you to come now. And Ashley's like, okay, I'll be there. Ashley takes several hours to get to the house, and at this point, when Ashley gets to the house, Nevaeh's like, I'm already at the hospital, you took too long, whatever. So Ashley makes it to the hospital, and Ashley asks, oh, are you okay? Like, are you good? And Nevaeh tells her, yeah, I'm okay. Like, I don't know. The baby was just cramping, but the doctor said that this was normal. They make it back home. Everything was good. Nevaeh was missing her doctor's appointments because Ashley started changing things. Like, for example, Ashley was hiding her keys. Ashley popped her tire. Ashley like literally changed the date of her doctor's appointment to a different day because, you know, pregnant women experience something called pregnancy fog. So it's just like, if they don't write it down, then 9 times out of 10 they're not going to remember anything. Now again, Ashley's due date was before Nevaeh's, and Nevaeh started to notice that like Ashley wasn't feeling any Braxton Hicks. She wasn't even feeling like her baby was gonna come. But then again, she brushed all of that out of her mind because the doctor told her every pregnant woman is different. So Ashley and Nevaeh had both been planning this like thing for a couple of weeks. It was actually Ashley's idea. Basically, when they hit the 36-week mark, they were gonna do like a little popcorn movie night for making it this far into their pregnancies. And again, since Ashley is ahead of Nevaeh, she already hit the 36 weeks mark, and they were just like, we're gonna plan it for when you hit it. She hits the 36-week mark, y'all. They're getting the popcorn, they're getting everything, and Ashley basically set the whole house up. They were going to be watching like scary movies and stuff like that. Now the lights go off, they're starting to watch the movie, and this is where Ashley gets up, and Nevaeh has no idea where Ashley was going. She said she had to go to the bathroom, and she just brushed it off. She continues to watch the movie, and this is where she feels something sharp on the back of her back. Ashley basically tells her that she is going to take her baby, if you're catching my drift, from her and run away with the baby because she doesn't believe that Nevaeh deserves a baby. Now, at first, Nevaeh's like, bro, you're joking. Like, this is not serious. You're not gonna do this to me. Like, get out of my face. And Ashley's dead serious. She starts to poke the sharp thing harder. And this is where Nevaeh like bloody screams, and she somehow some way she knocks like Ashley down, and she runs into the room and she puts like stuff in front of the door. She calls the police, and this is where the police come in, and they basically have found out that Ashley was planning to, you know, take the baby from Nevaeh, run away with the baby so her and Nevaeh's husband can be together. Because guess what? Nevaeh's husband was cheating on her with Ashley the entire time, but Ashley kept unfortunately miscarrying her children. So like her husband never took her seriously, and she told her, like the husband told Ashley that he wasn't gonna mess with her anymore because of Nevaeh's pregnancy. And this made her come up with the whole thing that she was pregnant and it happened by a one night stand, and she was literally just planning to steal Nevaeh's husband and baby and leave Nevaeh dead.
My dad and I took a hike on the Appalachian Trail, and he didn't follow the rules. He put us both in mortal danger. The summer before I started college, I set my sights on hiking a portion of the Appalachian Trail. I had been planning it for years. Daily hikes through the woods in my town, solo camping trips, collecting gear one piece at a time with what I could scrape together. When I told my dad, he insisted on coming with me. For protection, he said. The irony is bitter now. I had protection. I had my bundle of sage and rosemary, coins, a lock of my hair, a sachet of salt, and iron nails I kept buried deep in my bag, passed down from my grandmother, who never once entered the forest without hers. I also had protection against the more mortal predators, bear spray, a knife, a taser. But no talisman in the world could prepare me for what we'd awaken. When I showed Dad my supplies, he laughed. "You mean your little bags of seasoning and trinkets? Those won't save you from a bear or a murderer." They weren't meant to, I had muttered. Rule 1. Keep salt and iron on you. I'd learned that salt purifies and iron protects. A line of either can mean the difference between going home or being taken. The trailhead was too quiet when we arrived. Not peaceful. Empty. The air felt wrong, like the forest was waiting for something. Watching. The leaves didn't rustle. The birds didn't sing. Dad didn't notice. He stomped along in brand new boots, whistling a tune off key. His cheerful noise died instantly after leaving his lips, swallowed by the woods. I stayed silent, tucked the iron nail under my shirt where it brushed my collarbone, cold against my skin. Rule 2. Don't whistle in the woods, my grandmother had said. It calls spirits to you. We hiked for hours. As the afternoon went by, the trees changed. The pines grew tighter, closer, wrong. Their trunks were too thick, bark gnarled and blackened like burned flesh. The air grew hot and humid, despite the elevation. Wet like a held breath. Light barely filtered through the thickening canopy. Even in the middle of the day, it was gray and dim. That's when I felt it. Not saw. Felt. Like something massive, ancient and cold had stirred beneath the earth and opened one eye. I stopped walking. Dad noticed and turned back. "You coming, Ellie?" he shouted, holding a walking stick that he probably found somewhere on the side of the trail. He had just broken 2 rules in one go. Rule 3. Don't speak your name too loud. It lets them know who you are. Rule 4. You never take things from the forest. Leave every stone, stick, and bone as you found it, I remembered. Some things belong to the forest. Some things guard it. Yeah, I lied, noticing that we had somehow wandered off the main trail. Hopefully not too far. I shouldn't have been blindly following my dad, knowing that he didn't know how to read trail markers. Rule 5. Stay out of hollers you don't know. Some places are thin, I'd read. Time folds. Trails change. You might walk forever and never leave. We kept going, trying to veer back towards the main trail. Then we saw it, right in the center of the path, a pile of blackened stones encircling a bare patch of dirt, and in its center, a bundle of twigs bound tightly with hair. Human, by the look of it. Long, reddish-blonde strands matted together with something dark. The air stank, copper, rot, and blood baked into the soil. "Leave it," I said, my voice low and sharp. "It's a warning." Dad knelt down and poked at it with his walking stick. "Probably just some hiker's weird little voodoo project. Don't let it freak you out." And then he muttered, superstitious nonsense, under his breath. "Dad, stop. Don't touch it." But it was too late. The stick scattered the stones. The wind shifted instantly, sharp, cold, unnatural. It cut through the trees, though not a single branch moved. Then came the whistle. Not like Dad's rambling melody. It was a piercing, slow, almost human sound that climbed and fell in a way that made my teeth hurt. It came from nowhere. Everywhere. Behind us. Ahead. Dad stood up abruptly. Did you hear that? I grabbed his arm. Don't look back. Don't speak. Walk. Now. We walked. But now all signs of a trail were gone. The trees closed in behind us. We passed the same tree again and again. Its bark split in 3 deep vertical slashes, too wide to be from a bear. How the fuck are we going in circles? Dad barked. We've been walking straight the whole time. A second whistle cut through the air. Closer this time. Run! I screamed. We ran. Branches tore at us. A fog suddenly descending and obscuring our vision. Something moved through the trees with us. Long-limbed, unnaturally fast. I caught glimpses. A shape with too many joints. A body that bent the wrong way. A face that shimmered and changed, wearing my face. Then she hissed and withdrew.
Without having to be there all day. At the same time, it gave me a weird, uncanny feeling. All this space and not enough people to fill it up. I ignored the feeling and moved on. I don't know about you, but whenever I go to an amusement park, I like to work my way up to the really crazy rides. I'll start small and finish off the day with my favorite. My favorite just happened to be called the Grim Reaper. It feels a little too on the nose, doesn't it? It was 7:30 p.m., and the park closed at 8 p.m. and I knew it was time to get in line for my final ride. I also made a new friend while there. We met standing in line at one of my first rides of the day. We decided after chatting the whole time in line that we'd hang out for the rest of the day. His name was Charlie. We agreed on every ride that day, except for the last. He wanted to end the night on the Mind Binder, but after some convincing, aka, the Mind Binder's line was way short. I wondered if I was all worked up because I watched Final Destination 3 with a friend a couple weeks back. But I wasn't having visions of the terrible fate we would all face. I was just feeling off. I did everything in my power to get it to all make sense and to not worry, but nothing worked. I seriously considered just telling Charlie I didn't feel great after the last ride, but I finally found someone with my taste in roller coasters. I didn't want to let him down. We were towards the back of the line, so we didn't have much say in where we sat. We ended up in the third car from the front. I was just happy we weren't in the front car. As you get on the Grim Reaper, it plays a cheesy little jingle. Nowhere to run, nowhere to hide. The Grim Reaper will find you dead or alive. With music in the background that always sounded so dumb in the past. I couldn't believe it was getting to me. Charlie even hummed along to it while grabbing my arm with happiness. We got in our seats, and an employee came by and pulled down the metal bar restraint to secure us in our seats. It was the kind that strapped you individually over your shoulder. I'm on the chubbier side, but I can always fit into coaster seats. I've never been told I couldn't go on a ride. I'm just sometimes a little snug. It's actually kind of nice because I feel very secure. As we got strapped in, I felt the plastic-coated metal hit my shoulders and chest. It should have given me a sense of comfort and safety, but I just felt trapped. The employee walked back to the station that has the infamous big button that starts the ride. He flashed all a thumbs up and yelled, "Ready for the Reaper?" Everyone raised their hands and let out an excited scream. Except for me. I let out a large sigh, counting down the seconds. Trying to imagine Charlie and I once we were off the ride and how happy we would be. The employee hit the button, and we were off. The coaster shot out of the loading station like we were a bullet being shot out of a gun. After that, it started on a relatively slow ascent up a point to a drop-off of 60 degrees, a couple of twists and turns, a big loop, and some more twists and turns. About halfway through the ride, I was enjoying myself. I was thinking about how the hard part was done, and I was safe. Just a little anxiety was all. We were rounding out our last bend when a sense of relief came over me. I could see the end of the ride. I was almost done. But the ride didn't start to slow down. Normally, the coaster starts to slowly come to a full stop several hundred feet from the end, but it was still going. As we passed by the loading area, I saw the operators look confused as we raced by. I noticed no one else was waiting in line. Someone screamed, "One more time," and everyone on board gave an excited response. Everyone except for me. Charlie looked over at me and grabbed my wrist. Yes, I knew they would let us keep going. This is awesome. He let out an excited yelp as we reached the climb to the drop. He was beaming with joy the whole rest of the lap. We passed by the loading area once again, but this time the coaster operator had a couple other people standing with him. The operator who strapped us looked red and worried. As we were whipped by the employees for our third ride of the day, the other riders were divided. Some were still excited, screaming, "Let's go. One more time." Or, "Tell your kids not to stay out past 7 o'clock. Some people started Please just listen to me." When I was a kid, my parents used to tell me stories about the bonum sector, or the 7 o'clock man in English, which basically is a sinister old figure who snatched children who didn't come home before dark. I always thought it was just one of those scare tactics adults used to make kids behave, something to roll your eyes at. And I did, until last month. Let me back up a bit. I, 27M, worked as a counselor at a kids' winter camp, and tradition wanted that at the end of each day, 2 or 3 counselors would tell the kids scary stories around the campfire while eating marshmallows. A classic summer camp stereotype, you might say, but incredibly effective at delighting the kids, and the bonum scepter was always one of my favorite. So, I tell the tale of a hunched old man, dressed in tattered black clothes, who prowled the streets and fields at dusk. According to legend, he carried a large burlap sack slung over his shoulder, big enough to fit a child. According to the legend, he walked the streets whistling, a sharp, high-pitched sound to lure curious kids into the dark. Once they came too close, he'd snatch them, stuff them into his sack, and take them away. Where? No one knew. Some said to a hidden lair, others said to the woods. The stories varied, but the ending was always the same. The children were never seen again. The kids loved it. They shrieked and laughed nervously, clinging to each other as the firelight danced on their faces. But for me, it was just that, a story. I'd never believed a word of it. That changed on a bitterly cold night last December. It was a weeknight, and I'd been out running errands in a small Quebec town where the camp was located. Snow was falling steadily, muffling the world in a thick, eerie silence. The streets were nearly deserted, save for the occasional car crawling cautiously over the icy roads. My bags of groceries hung heavy in my hands as I trudged along the sidewalk, eager to get back to the warmth of my apartment. Then I heard a child scream, high-pitched and panicked, echoing down the street. I froze. It was the kind of sound that twists your stomach into knots. But looking around, I saw no one. The streetlights cast long, yellowish beams onto the snow, but the surrounding alleyways and doorways were shadows, dark and impenetrable. The scream came again, this time closer. Instinct took over, and I dropped my bags, calling out, "Hello? Anyone needs help?" No answer. The snow crunched behind me. I spun around, heart hammering, but saw nothing but my own footprints. The street was empty. Then I heard a whistle, high and sharp, slicing through the silence like a knife. My breath caught in my throat. It was just as I described it to the kids so many times. A chill ran down my spine, and not from the cold. I told myself it was just someone playing a prank, maybe a kid messing around. But then the whistle came again, closer this time, and I realized something else. It was coming from the direction I just walked. There were no footprints in the snow behind me. And then, I saw him. A figure emerged from the shadows of an alleyway, stepping into the pale glow of a street lamp. He was tall and thin, impossibly so, his body wrapped in layers of ragged black cloth that hung off him like a shroud. His face was obscured by the brim of a battered hat, but I could see enough to know something was wrong. His skin was grayish, stretched taut over his sharp cheekbones, and his mouth twisted into a grotesque grin that revealed teeth far too long and jagged to be human. Slung over his shoulder was a burlap sack. It squirmed. I was frozen, unable to look away as he reached into the sack and pulled out a small, pale human hand. My stomach turned as I realized it belonged to a child. The figure held the limp arm as if inspecting it, then glanced up at me. Though his eyes were hidden, I felt his gaze lock onto mine, heavy and oppressive. "You were out late," he rasped, his voice like the creak of a door hinge. He dropped the hand back into the sack, which gave another faint wriggle. "You shouldn't be out so late." I stumbled back, nearly slipping on the icy sidewalk, and bolted. I ran faster than I've ever run in my life, the sound of crunching snow and that damn whistle chasing me all the way home. I didn't look back. I couldn't. When I finally slammed the door behind me, I locked every bolt and turned off all the lights. For hours, I sat in the dark, trying to convince myself it was just a trick of the light, a figment of my imagination. But when I finally worked up the nerve to look outside, the snow in front of my building was undisturbed. No footprints. Nothing to suggest anyone had been there. Except for the faint imprint of a sack, dragged through the snow. I haven't told this story to the kids at camp since that night. I've tried to forget it ever happened. Tell your kids not to stay out past 7 o'clock. Please just listen to me. When I was a kid, my parents used to tell me stories about the Bonhomme Scepter, or the 7 o'clock man in English, which basically is a sinister old figure who snatched children who didn't come home before dark. I always thought it was just one of those scare tactics adults use to make kids behave, something to roll your eyes at. And I did, until last month. Let me back up a bit. I, 27M, worked as a counselor at a kids' winter camp, and tradition wanted that at the end of each day, 2 or 3 counselors would tell the kids scary stories around a campfire while eating marshmallows. A classic summer camp stereotype, you might say, but incredibly effective at delighting the kids, and the Bonhomme Scepter was always one of the favorite. So, I'd tell the tale of a hunched old man, dressed in tattered black clothes, who prowled the streets and fields at dusk. According to legend, he carried a large burlap sack slung over his shoulder, big enough to fit a child. According to the legend, he'd walk the streets whistling, a sharp, high-pitched sound, to lure curious kids into the dark. Once they came too close, he'd snatch them, stuff them into his sack, and take them away. Where? No one knew. Some said to a hidden lair, others said to the woods. The stories varied, but the ending was always the same. The children were never seen again. The kids loved it. They shrieked and laughed nervously, clinging to each other as the firelight danced on their faces. But for me, it was just that, a story. I'd never believed a word of it. That changed on a bitterly cold night last December. It was a weeknight, and I'd been out running errands in a small Quebec town where the camp was located. Snow was falling steadily, muffling the world in a thick, eerie silence. The streets were nearly deserted, save for the occasional car crawling cautiously over the icy roads. My bags of groceries hung heavy in my hands as I trudged along the sidewalk, eager to get back to the warmth of my apartment. Then I heard a child scream, high-pitched and panicked, echoing down the street. I froze. It was the kind of sound that twists your stomach into knots. Looking around, I saw no one. The streetlights cast long, yellowish beams onto the snow, but the surrounding alleyways and doorways were shadows, dark and impenetrable. The scream came again, this time closer. Instinct took over, and I dropped my bags, calling out, "Hello? Anyone needs help?" No answer. The snow crunched behind me. I spun around, heart hammering, but saw nothing but my own footprints. The street was empty. Then I heard a whistle, high and sharp, slicing through the silence like a knife. My breath caught in my throat. It was just as I described it to the kids so many times. A chill ran down my spine, and not from the cold. I told myself it was just someone playing a prank, maybe a kid messing around. But then the whistle came again, closer this time, and I realized something else. It was coming from the direction I'd just walked. There were no footprints in the snow behind me. And then, I saw him. A figure emerged.
And we also both worked jobs part-time as well. So one night, I came back home to the house after a late class. I had been gone basically all day since the morning, because I spent the time in between my classes studying in buildings around campus. After arriving back to the house, I parked out front on the side of the street and walked up to the front door. I went inside and was going to go upstairs and change. However, right when I got inside, something seemed off. The first room in the house was the living room, and it looked a little bit messed up. Also, the door that leads to the basement was wide open, and we always kept it closed. I knew that Jason was gone at work until later, and of course, I figured that he was responsible for the mess and the open door. It was not really like him though, because we were both pretty clean and picked up after ourselves. But obviously, it couldn't be anybody else. I thought maybe he left in a hurry and had been looking for something. Either way, it wasn't too big of a deal. I just picked up the few things that were on the floor, and then I went over and closed the door. I was going to go upstairs and change then, so I walked up and then went to my bedroom. Then I took a quick shower, changed clothes, and then went back downstairs to get something to eat. After going back downstairs though, I saw that the basement door was once again open. This really creeped me out. I had a bad feeling about it immediately, but I thought that maybe Jason had returned home early from work. I called out his name, asking if he was back. He obviously didn't go upstairs, or I would have seen or heard him. But when I called out, I got no response. I decided to go and look in the basement. At our house, we had this old, unfinished basement. We mostly didn't have anything down there except for the washing machine, dryer, and a few boxes. I took like 1 or 2 steps down the stairs. As soon as I did, I immediately saw somebody down there. It was dark, so I didn't get a good look at all. It appeared to be a man though, and somebody who I did not recognize. He was just barely in my sight. After seeing him, I could not believe it. But then he started to turn, and I think to look at me. But right away, I turned around and quickly went back upstairs. Then I closed the door behind me. Then I ran upstairs and went back inside of my bedroom. I closed the door and locked it behind me. After that, I got out my phone and I dialed 911. Right as this was all going on, I started to hear the guy walking around downstairs. I spoke with the 911 dispatcher explaining the situation. But right after I did, I heard the man start to walk upstairs. I just hoped that he wouldn't try to get in my bedroom. My room was the first one at the top of the stairs to the right. Jason's room was a little ways down and to the left, and he also had his door shut. The only other room up there was the bathroom. So after the footsteps reached the top of the stairs, almost instantly they were right outside of my door. I was really nervous. Then they turned and tried the door handle. I'm so happy that my door had a lock on it. When the door didn't open, the guy walked further down the hallway. I heard him opening Jason's door, which was unlocked. Then he went inside there. This really creeped me out because whoever this guy was knew that I must have seen him, and instead of leaving, he chose to go upstairs and seemingly go after me. I did my best to keep calm. I just hoped that the police would arrive shortly. The man stayed inside of Jason's bedroom for probably 2 or 3 minutes. Then he came back out. He seemed to go near the bathroom for a few seconds, then he turned around and headed back towards my room. Except this time, he walked past and went back down the stairs. After going back down, I heard him walking a little, then the sound of the front door opened and shut. I figured that he left, but I still didn't leave my bedroom. Just a few minutes after that, the cops got there. I went down and told them what happened. They looked around, but the guy was gone. I called Jason and told him about it too. He came home a while later, and unfortunately, a few things were stolen from his bedroom. We never found out who did it. Also, I'm pretty sure whoever this guy was just walked right in. We didn't do a very good job of locking our door because we were always coming and going. But after that, we did.
When I started babysitting, the parents gave me a horrifying set of rules. I thought I hit the jackpot when a rich family paid me $200 to babysit their child for a night. I never could have guessed this would have led to my life being ruined forever. The children were extremely well behaved and everything went smoothly the first night. The young couple must have thought that I had done a good job because word spread quickly around the rich neighborhood that I was a great babysitter choice. This was perfect for me. Most of the families around here pay way better than where I live since they all come from a long line of wealthy families, but I was always suspicious about some of the families. You hear rumors about really rich people, some very creepy stories, but I never actually believed any of them. Sometimes I'll babysit for a few hours and make a couple $100. Other times the parents want me to stay the night while they go off and get a hotel room so that they could be away from their kids for a change. That is where I make the big bucks. A couple of days ago, a husband and wife had texted me asking if I could stay the night at their mansion and watch their 7-year-old little girl for them. I happily agreed, not knowing this might be the last time I ever see the outside world again. When the day finally came, I drove my beat-up Jeep Wrangler to the edge of the rich neighborhood and made my way up this private driveway that I had never noticed before because the entrance was hidden back amongst the trees that surround the entire north side of town. I drove up this steep, winding driveway for what seemed like 10 minutes before I finally saw the house come into view. Out of all the houses I've babysat at, this was hands down the most gorgeous one I've ever seen. I hoped I would get some good money for this. I got out of my car and made my way up to the front porch, where I knocked on this gigantic wooden door. A few seconds later, a beautiful woman in her mid-30s answered and introduced herself as Mrs. Collins. She called her husband down, and shortly after, an extremely handsome man, also in his 30s, came walking down the grand stairway, holding an adorable little girl in his arms. The couple seemed very anxious to leave, and even though they were both gorgeous people, I could tell that underneath all of their beauty, they were both extremely tired and haggard from having to keep up with their 7-year-old. They were obviously very excited about having an entire night to themselves, and couldn't wait to get out of there as fast as they could. Before Mr. and Mrs. Collins left, however, Mrs. Collins handed me several pieces of paper and told me that she had written down a couple of instructions for me to follow throughout the night. She stressed to me how important it was to follow her instructions, and I assured her that I'd give them a look. I waved to the pretty young couple as they made their way down the driveway in their expensive Mercedes, and then closed the door behind me. I gave the instructions a quick once-over before folding the papers and stuffing them into my back pocket. I'll look at them later, I told myself. How stupid I was to do that. Mr. and Mrs. Collins' daughter Samantha was a very nice young girl who warmed up to me almost immediately, or so I thought. We had spent the next few hours playing games and watching TV. After we finished our 5th episode of Teen Titans Go, I noticed that it was getting late and asked Samantha what her bedtime was. She shrugged, not really giving me an answer, which is when I remembered Mrs. Collins' instructions. I pulled out the folded pieces of paper and scanned through them very quickly when I saw the words, "Samantha needs to be in bed before 8 p.m. I checked the time to find that it was almost 7:45. "Well, it looks like your bedtime is right now," I said, lift Samantha up off the couch so I could get her ready. She brushed her teeth and I tucked her into her California king-sized mattress. I told her goodnight and was leaving her room when she said something that stopped me in my tracks. "Don't forget to lock my door before you leave," she said. I stopped walking and turned back around toward her, confused. "What do you mean, don't forget to lock your door?" I asked. "Why would I need to lock your door? What if you have to go to the bathroom in the middle of the night?" She looked at me innocently and shrugged her shoulders again. "I don't know, but Mommy always locks my door before I go to sleep. She says she does it to protect me and herself. I don't remember what happens after I fall asleep, but Mommy says that I always try to leave my room at night, which is a bad thing." I looked at her dumbfounded. I didn't know what to say. What sort of parents would lock their child in their room at night? "Mommy told me that she would leave instructions for you to follow, and locking my door is one of them," she said. I had forgotten to read the rules. "Oh, okay, Samantha, I'll lock your door." "Good. Good night, sweetheart," I stammered. She gave me a big smile and rolled over in her bed. I closed her door and noticed that there was a latch drilled into the door frame that would allow someone to lock it from the outside. I closed the latch and then walked back downstairs so I could read the rest of Mrs. Collins's instructions. When I had first seen the pieces of paper, I was under the impression that they were just instructions that told me what shows Samantha is not allowed to watch or how to operate the surround sound. After I started reading them, though, I realized that I was wrong. I was completely and utterly wrong. I started reading "Hello, Annie. I'm so glad that you agreed to stay the night and babysit Samantha for us. She's such an angel, and I'm sure that the both of you will get along very well. I know that our house might seem old and scary, but don't worry because nothing bad will happen to you as long as you follow some simple instructions. Firstly, Samantha needs to be in bed in her room with the door locked before 8 p.m. Do not open up her bedroom door after 8 p.m. I repeat, do not open Samantha's bedroom door after 8 p.m. She will try to convince you to open the door in many different ways. She will cry, scream, and threaten you until you give in, but do not listen to her. She can't hurt you as long as the door is closed." At this point, I was confused. Why would I leave her locked in there if she was screaming and crying to let her out? Something horribly wrong was going on here, but I continued reading. "Between 8:30 and 9:30 p.m., make sure you remain in the living room with the lights turned on. Around this time of night, you may hear scratching and growling coming from Samantha's room or from other parts of the house. These noises are nothing to worry about as long as you stay in the living room. Watch some TV to pass the time. We have a lot of movies to choose from. After 9:30, do not venture into any dark areas of the house. I would recommend that you turn on as many lights as you can before 9:30 so that you don't accidentally trap yourself. You might also happen to see a pair of yellow cat eyes looking at you through the darkness every once in a while. Do not stare at them for more than 30 seconds. These rules were getting more effed up by the second. I started sweating, my body feeling glued to the floor as I read over the strict but extremely terrifying rules that were put in place. Why had I agreed to take this job? At around 10 p.m., it might begin to sound like there are several people walking around in the basement downstairs. Do not worry, because as long as you stay out of the basement, they cannot get to you. I know it sounds unlikely, but around this time you will begin to feel an overwhelming urge to walk down into the basement. If this happens, go into the kitchen and drink a cold glass of milk. This usually helps. The urge will most likely pass after about 10 minutes, but if the urge is still there after 10 minutes and you don't think that you will be able to stop yourself from walking into the basement, then call either me or Mr. Collins and we'll tell you what to do. Now this next part is very important. You will be sleeping in our guest room upstairs for the night. Before you go to bed, make sure that you leave a plate outside your bedroom door with a piece of raw steak on it. You can find the raw steak in our refrigerator. And leave a glass of milk next to the plate as well. And that's about it. Final rule, don't eat meat after 8 o'clock. They might see it as a threat and will most likely attack you. P.S. Throughout the night you might hear a dog whimpering from somewhere off inside the house. We don't have a dog, so don't go looking for it. I hadn't realized what I had gotten myself into. Right as I had finished reading the rules, it was 8:31, and the growling noises just started. It sounded like they were coming from every room in the effing house. My hands were shaking as I reread the instructions, the realization of what I was dealing with sinking in. I was trapped in a house with something that was far from normal. The growling noises were getting louder and seemed to be coming from every room. I forced myself to calm down, taking deep breaths. I had to follow the rules no matter how bizarre they were. Over the next few hours, things only got stranger and more terrifying. The growling turned into scratching, and sometimes I would hear what sounded like a soft whimpering, like a dog. But I remembered Mrs. Collins's postscript. They didn't have a dog. I stayed in the living room, keeping the lights on as instructed, and waited. The urge to go down to the basement was strong, but I fought against it, going into the kitchen and gulping down glasses of milk. Around 10 p.m., I heard the sounds of footsteps in the basement, but I didn't go down there. I stayed put, watching TV to distract myself from the cacophony. It was during one of these distractions that I noticed a different piece of paper on the coffee table, a sheet that had been tucked away under a magazine. It was a diet plan for Samantha, written in Mrs. Collins's neat handwriting. My heart skipped a beat as I read through it. It was a weekly meal plan, but it wasn't the usual fare you'd feed a 7-year-old. Liver on Monday, kidneys on Wednesday, heart on Friday. It was a diet composed of human organs. My stomach churned as the horrifying truth hit me. Samantha wasn't just some ordinary child. She was something else. As the realization dawned on me, I heard a loud crash from upstairs. It sounded like a door being broken down. The noise was followed by the soft padding of feet on the staircase. Samantha. I could hear her humming a lullaby as she descended, her voice echoing through the eerily silent house. My heart pounded in my chest as I stood rooted to the spot, my mind racing. I thought back to Mrs. Collins's instructions, her insistence that I follow them exactly, but it was too late for that now. I had made a terrible mistake, and now I was about to pay the price. I could hear Samantha getting closer, her humming growing louder. It was then that I realized the horrifying truth. I wasn't here to babysit Samantha. I was here to feed her. I was the meal. Dragging his long nails behind him. "Julian," he growled. I then shot him in the head. At the top of the stairs were the tenants questioning the gunshot. They walked down the stairs to investigate. By the time I heard them scream, I was already out the door and backing out of their driveway. I didn't shoot David because I was scared of him. I shot him because of how awful the situation was. That was 2 days ago. I've been driving ever since. The only time I stopped was to fill my gas tank. I don't know where the hell I am. Last time I checked it said I was in Kansas. I don't know what to do. Should I join Davis in the afterlife, or should I try to move on? The most sickening thing is not knowing what happened. What the fuck happened? I keep asking myself. What the hell happened? My friend moved to a town where nobody is allowed to take photos at all. They took a photo and figured out the horrifying reason why they aren't allowed to. A couple months ago, my best friend Bryce moved away to a town I'd never heard of before. He had just landed his dream job. It was gutting to say the last, but worse than that, he practically ghosted me after he left. I sent a few texts here and there, even rang him a few times, but heard nothing in return. Having been close friends since we were kids, the experience was jarring and definitely shook my trust in friendship as a concept. Thankfully, he recently sent me a text message, apologizing for the radio silence and claiming that moving and starting a new position had taken over his headspace. He told me I should visit him in his new haunt, and I enthusiastically accepted. We carved out a week that worked for both of us, and the plan was set. Armed with a backlog of Spotify playlists to keep me company, I plugged the address he provided into my GPS and went on my way. It ended up being a lengthy and confusing drive through roads unfamiliar. Finally, I arrived in his neighborhood. I took in the scenery. This new neck of the woods was bizarre to say the least. On the same street housing tacky-looking detached homes stood gothic-looking manors straight out of a Victorian novel. Way too many convenience stores here for such a small community, and did I mention the town center? Well, wouldn't you have it, it was a collection of skyscrapers piercing through the clouds that looked sleeker than anything I'd ever seen before in my city girl life. The town planner clearly had a fragmented personality. I pulled into the driveway of Bryce's fancy cottage. Really, Bryce? A cottage? Ran up the steps, and rapped at the door. He peeked out through his living room curtains, and ever the goofball I knew and loved, shot me a puzzled look for minutes before he finally opened the door. I flung into him and gave my brother bear a big uninspired even. I wondered how long this move was really going to last. I stopped myself from ruminating further. This was too much honest reflection for what was supposed to be a vacation. A selfie was in order. I pulled out my phone, coffee in hand and Bryce's welcoming abode in the background. I already had the caption for the Instagram story, "Finally found him, you guys." I waited for him to round the corner. He emerged. I clicked. Snap. The light flashed to immortalize a pretty derpy looking me, and Bryce, mug caught in mid-fall, with his arm outstretched violently screaming no. Paralyzed by his yell, I turned to clock the shattered mug and liquid coffee beans spilling onto his hardwood floor. Shit. I looked up at him. Sorry, what happened? Did I just? His attention turned from me to the front door. He ran to it, checked the lock, then pulled at the door as if to test its integrity. He did the same with the balcony door, muttering to himself along the way. I'm so stupid. Of course she was gonna take a picture. Why would I be so careless? I should have known. I should have fucking known. Hey, I walked up to him. It was just a selfie, Bri. I'm sorry if it caught you off guard. He took a deep breath, then spoke in a tone that was very unbecoming of the Bryce I knew. It's my fault. I'm the moron. You always take pictures. It's what you fucking do. And what did I do? I left you. What scary gut feeling did you have that turned out to be true? 1. I was watching a movie with my roommate on a hot summer night. In an instant, I went from feeling completely relaxed to hyper alert. I had one thought in my head: close your bedroom window. I looked at my roommate and said, I have to close my bedroom window, and tore off down the hall. When I got into my bedroom, I could see a gloved hand on my window. It was the kind of window that opens out, and you pull it in to close it. There was a guy standing on the railing of our back stairs, trying to pull himself into our house through my window. I screamed. He dropped and ran, and I called 911. The police came with dogs but never found him. We didn't live in an unsafe neighborhood, and sitting in the house with the windows open in the summer wasn't something we ever worried about. I know that God, a guardian angel, or something was looking out for us that night. 2. I woke up one morning after having a bizarre nightmare. I dreamt that I called my boss and told him my youngest son was going to die. My son was only 10 days old at the time, a perfectly healthy, beautiful little baby boy. When I woke up, I felt nauseous from the dream and experienced the worst anxiety I've ever had. I knew intuitively that something was wrong with my son. He didn't show any rare signs or specific symptoms. The only thing that was odd was that he slept a bit heavier than usual that night. I couldn't ignore my anxiety. I checked his temperature and was shocked when it showed 35.1 degrees Celsius. I immediately took him to the ER and soon found out that an enterovirus, a normal winter season virus that gives you a cold, had affected his heart. The room was soon filled with doctors, and my husband and I were asked to leave. 12 hours later, the doctors informed us that the virus had caused our healthy baby serious heart failure, dilated cardiomyopathy, and myocarditis, and that he probably wouldn't make it. They called a priest, and the rest is a blur to me. Our baby was put into a coma on a respirator and was going to be placed on an ECMO, extracorporeal membrane oxygenation, machine. We were transferred to the ICU for infants. After 2 months in the ICU, he suddenly improved. The doctors told us that almost no children survive this virus on the heart because there are no obvious or clear signs, so the parents don't realize something is wrong. They also said that what he survived was theoretically impossible considering how ill he was. They asked me what caused us to seek help, and I told them about my dream. I will never forget the doctor's response: there are some things between heaven and earth that medicine can't explain. Your boy is a living miracle. He turns 5 next year and is almost fully recovered from the heart failure, except for 1/8 of his heart that is permanently damaged. 3. Around 2020, my brother was out with a girl, and I had gone to bed. I had work the next day, and we both still lived with our parents. Late at night, maybe around 11:30 or midnight, I woke up with a terrible feeling that something awful had happened to my brother. It's probably the only time in my life I've experienced genuine panic. I tried calling him on my mobile to no avail and went downstairs to my mom, who was still up at the time. She tried calling on the house phone. She tried to calm me down, but I just knew something had happened. As it turned out, his phone was on silent, and he had taken this girl for a drive. She had just started taking lessons, and he let her drive his car. During the drive, she lost control, and they narrowly avoided a collision. Thankfully, they were both fine, though very shaken, and my brother drove from that point on. Somehow, my out-of-nowhere gut feeling mirrored my brother's life flashing before his eyes. 4. I was downstairs one day, and my daughter was in her bedroom. I suddenly got this strange, indescribable feeling, like something was urging me to check on her. I couldn't brush it off, so I did. Upon reaching her room, I found her partway through taking an overdose. Luckily, I caught her just before she was about to take a handful of pills. I'll never understand what or who was looking out for her that day, but I am so thankful they were. 5. My siblings and I were swimming at a neighbor's house with their kids, but the adults were inside. Randomly, a thought came into my head: where's my sister? She could easily have gone inside or walked across the street back home, but I felt like I needed to find her immediately. I got all of us kids to search. We eventually noticed she was at the bottom of the pool, completely blue. She made a full recovery and is one of the best parts of my life. 6. You know that feeling when you're going down a flight of stairs and you miss one?
Shake the windows. I wasn't expecting anyone to come in that night, as I hadn't seen that many cars driving by on the highway. The rain seemed to keep everybody in, but then I heard a knock. When I looked up, I saw a man staring in the window. A chill ran down my spine. He was wearing a hoodie that hid his head and kept his face mostly in shadow, and he was rather aggressively banging on the window like he was in a hurry. I grabbed the mace I kept under the counter and slipped it into my pocket. Then I approached the window. "Do you have any vacancies?" he asked in a low voice, barely audible above the pounding rain. The vacancy sign glowed brightly behind him. There's no way he could have missed it. "Yeah, come on in," I said, unlocking the door with one hand and gripping the mace in my pocket with the other. He stepped inside. Rain dripped off his jacket and onto the floor. I barely glanced at him, turning around and walking back around the counter. Then I sat down at the computer, keeping my eyes fixed on the screen. In my peripheral vision, I could see him, leaning over the counter, his face only about a foot or two from mine, so close that I could smell the stale mothball odor coming off his clothes. So close I could hear drops of water plopping onto the counter from his sleeve. "Can you go faster?" he asked, his voice raspy in his throat. "Sorry, sir, I'm going fast as I can," I replied, my heart starting to pound. "It's an old computer. My fingers slipped on the mouse as I rushed to click the buttons. "I don't have all day," he growled, looming even closer to me. I wanted to look at him. My eyes were itching to glance up at the man that was 6 inches from my face, but I forced myself to stare at the screen. Whatever the hell was going on here, I was not going to be a witness. I was not going to look up and find myself face to face with a Smith and Wesson. "Your name?" I asked. As soon as the words came out of my mouth, I froze. I needed a name to book the room, that's all. But maybe he wouldn't see it that way. Maybe I wasn't supposed to ask for names. Maybe that was part of Frank's understanding with certain guests. Thankfully, nothing happened. After a second of hesitation, he replied, "Daniel Jones." The name struck me as fake. Common first name, common last name. But who even cared at this point? I typed his name into the system and completed the booking process. He paid for the room in cash, which was another unnerving detail, but I tried not to worry about it. I turned my back and took a key off the hook. "Room 7, I said, handing it to him. He thanked me and then waited by the door. I waited for a minute, then 2, but he didn't leave. "Do you need something?" I asked, careful not to make eye contact. "Can you escort me to my room?" Oh, hell no. There was no way I could go out there in the middle of the night with this creepy guy. That was like a death sentence. I glanced out the window and spotted his car, a beat-up sedan in one of the nearby parking spaces. The murder scenario played out in my head. Shoves me into the hotel room, kills me, sticks my body in the trunk, throws it in the middle of the woods, or maybe worse. Maybe my skin would end up crumpled on the floor of one of the rooms. Maybe he'd take my form, or turn me into something that sheds its skin like a snake, that has eyes too low on its face, or no eye sockets at all. And the longer I looked at him in the corner of my eye, the more I noticed how unsafing the man. With fast, jolted movements, she leapt at him. Facing the man. With fast, jolted movements, she leapt at him. Within seconds, he was dead. She stood on all fours above him, her knees bent the wrong way, her fingers far too long. Another horrible crackling sound, her neck stretched out 2 feet long, twisted like serpentine. And then she was me. I leapt away from the window with a scream. "What's happening?" the operator asked. "Sir, please tell me what's happening." I opened my mouth, tried to speak, but only a squeaking sound came out. By the time I made it back over to the window, the woman was standing there looking down at the kill. She looked normal, and she stepped over his body and walked towards the room. To my horror, she pulled out a key and opened room 22. Then she disappeared in the room. The police arrived a few minutes later. In strings of gibberish, I begged them to check room 22. That something horrible was lurking inside. But then, they knocked on the door. A completely normal-looking woman opened it. I watched from the lobby. I couldn't hear that much of their conversation over the pouring rain, but they weren't arresting her, weren't accusing her. They seemed to just be having a friendly conversation, asking her what she'd seen. Then they thanked her and came back to me. "We'll need to see the security tapes from tonight, please," the officer said in an accusing tone. But when I showed them the tapes, they got quiet. One of the officers made a call to someone saying something about an infestation. The other 2 officers ushered me out into the lobby, their faces grim. They told me not to leave as they talked among themselves in hushed voices in the corner of the room. Then they approached. "You didn't see anything tonight," the tall man said, leaning in closer. "You got that? Right, but what about—" "Listen to me very carefully," he interrupted, lowering his voice. "You didn't see anything, just like you never shoplifted in your life. What? You understand me?" he asked. The silence stretched out between us. "Yeah, I got it," I said, my voice wavering. "I didn't see anything. I left the motel and never went back. I planned to never speak of what I saw, to keep my mouth shut just like they told me to. But after losing many nights of sleep, I realized that I need to warn you. I need to warn you. I can't have another person dying because of these things, whatever they are. So I said, if you're driving through Michigan and see that there's a vacancy at the Greenbrier Motel, keep driving."
missing 30 years ago. I just found him in my basement. I just figured out where he actually went. When someone you love just disappears, it messes with your entire life. For me, it was my 13-year-old brother David. I loved my older brother so much. We were living in a small farm town in the Pennsylvania countryside. At that time, we were living in one of the oldest houses in town. Our house was built sometime in the late 1700s. On the night he went missing, I remember my parents weren't home that night for whatever reason, but back in the 80s it was considered okay to leave your kids home alone. Me and my brother were both sitting on the floor in the living room, listening to the radio broadcast. My brother asked me to fill him a glass of Hawaiian punch. After I went to the kitchen and poured him a glass, he had completely vanished from the living room. I remember that exact moment as clear as day. I thought he was playing a trick on me. I played along, but when I searched every room in that damn house, not a hair was out of place. He couldn't have gone outside because I was by the front door the whole time, and the windows were sealed shut since by the previous owner. The basement door in the living room was wide open. The only place he could have gone. When I left to fill up his drink, it was shut. I was horrified of the basement as a kid because there's no electricity down there and it literally looked like a dungeon. I yelled his name from the top of the stairs countless times, but he never answered. Even though I was 11, the basement still scared me. I remember that night, sobbing uncontrollably, and when my parents finally pulled into the driveway the next morning, I was still in tears when I told them about David. Mom and Dad checked the whole house. I then told Dad about how the basement door was wide open, and when he walked down into the basement, I remember sitting on the couch next to the basement door, hoping my dad would walk back up with David. But when Dad walked up those stairs, his face had gone completely pale. In his hands were my brother's clothes from the night before. I can't describe how horrified I was. He dropped them onto the ground and walked upstairs to where Mom was. I then got on the ground and crawled toward the clothes. Exactly what my brother was wearing before he disappeared. I sorted through them. Everything he wore that night, shirt, pants, underwear, socks, everything stripped from him. I could hear my parents' voices from upstairs. My mother then came sprinting down the stairs and got on the phone with the police. My dad ran outside and into the field. When the police finally arrived, the entire police team thought he must have gone outside and got lost in the nearby forest, but I knew for a fact he was in that house. The police officers spent weeks searching the woods and fields near our house. The police checked the basement, but said there was nothing. They closed the case about a half a year later. The entire town assumed it was a kidnapping. I knew it was something to do with that basement, but I could never get myself to go down there. After his disappearance, life continued for our family. We turned David's bedroom into a guest bedroom. I hated how my parents did that. It felt like they were trying to move on. I was unable to. Losing David was a huge damper over my entire family. Something that would hang over our heads our entire lives. Mom's way of coping with the grief was just erasing all memory of him. I hated her guts for that. Every time I looked at that basement door growing up, I could feel something behind it. I remember one day when I was 16, I was putting DVDs away in the living room. I was sitting a few feet away from that door and I smelled something familiar. The smell was seeping through the cracks of the door. It was what my brother smelled like. I got up and nearly ripped that door off the hinges. I ran downstairs into the darkness. The entire room smelled like David's old bedroom. It was pitch black, but I knew he was in there. I started screaming his name. I screamed his name for hours until Dad finally came down. Dad couldn't smell it. He thought I was insane. I remember I couldn't talk for weeks after that. Nowadays, the 30-year anniversary of David's disappearance is rolling around. I can say it's been a long 30 years without him. I'm now living alone an hour or so away from my childhood town. I had to get out of there as soon as possible. When I turned 18, I started looking toward apartments in town, and by my 20th birthday, I was out the door. My parents continued to live in that house. My mom developed stage 3 breast cancer about 3 years ago and was forced into a group home closer to the hospital. My father was given the option to move with her and sell the home, but he decided to stay there and continue farming. My mother and father had a tough relationship ever since I left the house, so Dad didn't mind the quiet. Later on, my dad fell off his tractor and broke his knee, and is now unable to walk without a cane. He then moved in with Mom, then sold me the land for free and insisted that I moved back into that house. I wanted nothing to do with that house. I had to pay taxes for that house on top of my own taxes. I then allowed tenants move in. They were a young couple, late 20s. Of course, my stubborn old man was angry with me for letting a desperate couple live in the vacant house. They've been living in that house for almost a year now, and they called me up last week complaining about a decaying smell coming from the basement. By that time, I had learned to adapt from David's death. I told them I'd check it out the next morning. That was the biggest mistake of my life. I woke up early the next morning and drove to the house. It felt odd driving back there. Those fields, it all felt so familiar. I tried not to think about how scared I was of that basement growing up. Fortunately, my dad finally added electricity down in the basement. I pulled into the driveway. They were both waiting outside for me. They said it smelled like something was rotting down there. I had everything I'd be needing: asbestos masks, medical gloves, eye protection. My grandpa, a retired homicide detective, just told me the case that still keeps him up at night. He was a detective for 27 years of his life, and I grew up listening to the tales of he and his fellow lawmen. As a child, he obviously amended the stories quite a bit to make them age appropriate, but as I grew up, more and more of the true stories came out. Starting about 2 years ago, my grandpa got sick. He's been on a slow decline ever since, and while it's been one of the hardest things I've ever had to deal with, his illness acted as the catalyst for a set of stories he'd never before brought up. He said he kept them filed away deep in the folder he doesn't like to open. He calls them the impossible ones. But this last one, the one he told me last night, he says it's the one that still keeps him up some nights, the one he thinks about every day. He said he's looked over the case files more times than he can remember, done a full re-examination of it all more times than he can remember, and it never makes any more sense. He said he only told me now because he can feel in his bones that he doesn't have a lot of time left. I recorded him telling me the story, so what follows is my transcription of the case, verbatim. I've only excluded his coughing fits and any off-topic remarks made during the telling of the case. The case was a murder/kidnapping, at least that's what it looked like, and it was me and Olson. I've told you about it. There was a family, the Nabels. There was Benjamin, the husband, Jennifer, the wife, and Katie, their 6-year-old daughter. One of their neighbors had gone out for the paper around 6 a.m. and saw the Nebels' front door wide open. When she went over to see if everything was okay, she saw the wife's body. The neighbor called 911 and eventually we were sent over there. Now, when I say there was no outward signs of a struggle, I mean it. There was no sign whatsoever that anything had happened, well, except for the dead body. But even her body, there were no wounds, no marks of any kind. I'm getting ahead of myself. On our way to the house, it came over the radio that the husband and daughter were unaccounted for. If you're thinking the husband did it, we did too, obviously. Problem was, both the family's cars were still in the garage. So we think they might be on foot. Some officers canvassed the neighborhood, and no one had seen them, including 2 neighbors that were on their porches for hours starting in the early morning. No one had heard any kind of commotion coming from their house, either. I mentioned the wife's body. She didn't have a hair out of place. She was on her back in the kitchen, about a third of her upper body was under the table. We found out after the autopsy that, well, she just died. There was no cause that they could find. She'd been a perfectly healthy woman, didn't smoke, didn't drink, ate right, exercised. It was like she just blinked her eyes and gone from alive to dead. Anyways, we searched the house. We went through it with a fine-tooth comb, basement to attic, found nothing. No evidence of a struggle, no weapon, nothing. So we left. We'd spent hours in that house, thought maybe we should come back in a day or two with some fresh eyes. We went over to where Benjamin worked. He was a supervisor at a lumber yard. According to his co-workers, he'd shown up at work that morning just before 5 a.m. when he got and he worked on this narrow crate thing he was building in his office, something he told his co-workers was a project for his house. According to the other morning supervisor, he'd only built about half of the thing. Around 6:15, he said he was running to the bathroom, and that was the last anyone saw him. They never saw him leave. While we were at the lumber yard, I realized I'd left my notes at the house. We drove back over there, and we got there while they were taking the wife's body away. As soon as we walked in, the stench hit us like a bus. It was, well, it was what a newly discovered but long dead body smells like. We knew it obviously couldn't have been the wife. We asked a few of the officers and forensics folks that were still at the house what the smell was, and they told us that it had only started a few minutes before we'd gotten back there. I'm not exaggerating when I say the smell was everywhere in the house. I've smelled some dead ones before, but this smelled like every wall in the place was lined with bodies. Pretty quickly, we found that the smell was strongest leading up to the attic. Now I told you before, we checked the attic. I checked it myself probably 5 times. But we went back up, me and Olson. I was up the little pull-down ladder first, and when I poked my head up I saw something. I saw a piece of wood, like a box, you know, a crate. It was shaped kind of like a rifle case. Maybe 3 feet tall, 2 feet wide, maybe 6 inches deep, rectangular. It was standing straight up, and there was blood leaking from it. We called the photographers and all the people in there, they all do their thing, and finally they pull out all the nails and open the box. Out falls the husband. Think about that. This guy was maybe 5 feet 10 inches, 140 pounds, and he was put in a 3 foot by 2 foot by 6 inch crate. His bones were just a mess. His insides, all his organs, they were flattened. They were just, wet, squishy pieces of fabric, almost. He was stuffed in there like, I don't know what like. He was just a rectangle of blood, skin, and parts. His skin had the discoloration of a body that had been dead for about 2 weeks, which obviously didn't make sense since they'd seen him at work that morning. He was also missing his eyeballs. We were standing there trying to rationalize the whole situation when something caught everyone's ears at the same time. A little girl's voice, calling out for help. What followed was a sequence of all the people in the attic, and the rest of the house, and the people out on the lawn, and the few people that were standing on the other side of the yellow tape, all saying some variation of the phrase "it sounds like it's coming from over there." Problem was, every single person swore they heard it coming from a different direction. Me, I heard it from right above me. No kidding. The first time I heard that little voice say "help me," I looked straight up, right up to the rafters. Of course she wasn't there. It was just my brain's response to where it perceived her voice is coming from. We had to listen to every one of these people tell us where they thought they heard her voice coming from. People swore up and down they heard it coming from the kitchen cabinets, the bedroom closets, the refrigerator, the tank behind the toilet, for God's sake. People on the street said they heard it from underneath cars, behind trees, on the sides of the houses next to the Nabels. Everyone heard her voice for about a minute and a half, 2 minutes tops. And then it just stopped. About 2 weeks after that day, the wife's sister had a funeral for Jennifer. It went fine. They buried her, all that. The husband's remains were cremated not long after that and put on display in a different part of the cemetery. I don't remember exactly when it happened, but at some point over the few weeks after he was cremated, someone stole his urn. It was missing for about 6 months, and then one day we get a call. Find out a groundskeeper at the cemetery had called in. The wife had been dug up and posed like she was leaning against the grave, just relaxing. She had the urn in her hands, but it was wrapped in skin. Well, they tested it, and it was the husband's skin. They'd pretty well reconstructed the man after he poured out the crate, and he hadn't been missing any skin. And remember I told you his skin was discolored? Well, this skin was perfectly preserved. And inside the urn? With his ashes, there were 3 eyeballs. Only one of them was the husband's. It's been, what, 22 years. I still hear that girl's voice calling out sometimes. And I don't mean my memory or mind is playing tricks on me. Ask your grandmother, she's heard her. The same 6-year-old voice. And then, I remember it was May 12, 2007. I was going to pick up a pizza for us. I saw that girl. I saw Katie Neville. I don't mean I saw her grown up. I don't mean I saw a little girl that looked like her when she was young. I mean I saw that fucking kid. She was standing outside the Walgreens right by our old house, crying. I pulled over and got out of the car, and I started to walk up to her. I can't explain how I felt in that moment. I was nauseous. I was so afraid. Terrified. More than I've ever been. She looked right at me and said in that same voice, "Help me, please." I don't know what the hell happened, but she just disappeared. I never took my eyes off her. She was just there 1 second, gone the next. I thought I was losing my mind. I was seriously worried about my mental health. But then, about an hour after I got back home, the phone rang. It was Olson. Hadn't talked to the son of a gun in 5 years, and he called me that night. Said he saw Katie Neville sitting on a bus stop bench, crying. He lived on the other side of the country. Unalived himself the next day. My grandpa took a deep breath after that. There's never a good ending to these stories, I know. If there was, they wouldn't be the impossible ones. I'd have figured them out one way or the other. And I know I've told you some others, but that girl's voice still wakes me up in the middle of the night. Sometimes I hear it from downstairs, sometimes from the bathroom. Sometimes I'll be laying on my side, facing away from your grandmother, and it'll sound like it's coming from her mouth. We never found a trace of that girl, nothing. I told you what they do with those cases, but goddammit. I'm sorry. That's it. That's the worst one. Some of the other ones might sound worse to you, but that's the worst for me. Okay, he told me he didn't want to talk about it anymore, and said now that he told me, he'd never talk about it again. I asked, "I'm right in front of you." He said, "Why won't you tag me?" I sighed. "You were making me uncomfortable, Elliot. You weren't yourself when you were it." A fleeting glint in his eye sent a weighty lump of fear cascading to the pit of my stomach. It was a glimmer of cruelty that had been burgeoning beneath the surface of his cold, unfeeling eyes for 3 years. The look that I'd hoped would go away if I were to stop playing his haunted game. The true horror had yet to begin. "This won't do at all, Lisa," he whispered in a voice hardly his own. "I've been patient. I thought you were planning the ultimate move. I'm going to have to make a new rule. When someone is it, they must make an effort to tag the other player. Otherwise, the other player becomes it." I scoffed. "Look, I'd happily play the game if you could be normal about it." Elliot smiled. "Of course, I won't take it too seriously. It's fun, Lisa, that's why I want to play." This was a little over a year ago, and it was anything but fun after that. I couldn't decide whether I feared hunting Elliot or being hunted by him. On one hand, the thought of Elliot lurking around any corner in my home filled me with an unyielding sense of horror. On the other hand, whenever he was chasing me, I felt genuine terror at what would happen when he tagged me. And one day, my fear was justified. "Elliot!" I screamed. I was lying on the floor, shivering after my husband had tagged me. But tag doesn't begin to cover it. Elliot thumped me in the arm with a cricket bat. Thumped it so hard that I couldn't move it. I would later find out that it was broken. "New rule," Elliot said, cracking his neck in a horrid, inhuman way. "Every tag is more creative than the last." Shaking uncontrollably, I finally snapped. I'd given the man so many chances, but physical abuse? That was the line. He'd crossed it, and there was no coming back from that. It was finally time to abandon the marriage. "You hit me, it's over," I said. "I'm moving out. You're not the man I married." He never would have hurt me. Elliot froze, and something inexplicably horrifying happened. His eyes blackened. The newly darkened pupils merged with the whites of his eyes. "Do you think the game ends if we end?" Elliot asked, sinisterly snickering. "You're still it, and if you don't make an effort, what's happened to you, Elliot?" I wailed, clutching my broken arm and sliding away from the unhinged figure who loomed above me. "We're not playing tag anymore." "Oh? Okay. New rule," he said. "When I next tag you, the game's over. No. You can't tag me ever again. I'm it," I whispered. Remember the rule. You only stay it if you make an effort," Elliot gleefully said, striding towards me. "Are you going to make an effort?" I ran out of the house, left arm hanging limply by my side. I used my right hand to scoop my phone out of my pocket, and I called my sister from the side of a busy road. She urged me to call the police, but Elliot had fled when officers reached the house. I couldn't stop thinking about the blackness that spread across his eyes. So, I ended up on an online forum talking about blackened eyes and changed personalities. One user's comment sent chills through my body. He's got the black bug. He'll only stop playing when one of you dies. Terrified beyond words, I decided that it wasn't safe for me to live with my sister. If the anonymous commenter were correct, then Elliot's talk about the game being over would surely have spelled my end. I moved to a lakeside cabin under a different name, intending to stay far away from Elliot until I could figure out the next course of action. I woke at 4 a.m. one particularly wintry morning in December. The sound of giggling filled the lakeside cabin, and I trembled. Walking to the edge of the upper balcony, I looked below to see a horrifying sight in the middle of the living room. A head peering over the back of the sofa. Peekaboo, Elliot chortled. I screamed and hauled my half-frozen body towards the stairs, barreling towards the front door. But as my hand clutched the handle, something clutched me. I turned to see Elliot on the floor, propped up by hands and legs in a low, crouching position. The fingers on one of his hands were curled viciously around my ankle. And he was grinning. That awful grin. Hang. He whispered, "Game over." His mouth opened, revealing numerous rows of unnaturally jagged, janky teeth. Poised to pounce, with a vehement look in his eyes, Elliot chuckled again. I screeched, swinging my foot squarely at his jaw. As the demonic man recoiled, I fled from the lakeside house and drove far away. That was months ago. I know Elliot's still out there. The game's not over. Like the online forum user said, he'll only stop playing when one of you dies. Something knocked on my window last night. I live on the 15th floor. He knocks. I'll check the building perimeter, but I haven't seen any maintenance crews or window washers scheduled for tonight. You sure it wasn't from the hallway? Positive. It came from outside. Okay, I'll take a look. Probably just the building settling or maybe something from the roof. He hung up. I stood by my window for another 20 minutes, but heard nothing more. Eventually, I convinced myself it was some acoustic trick, sound traveling down from an upper floor, maybe, or wind moving something on the roof. The next night, I made sure to keep my bedroom curtains closed. At 11:47 p.m., the knocking came again. This time it was different. Not 3 polite knocks, but a continuous, rhythmic tapping. Like fingernails drumming against glass. Tap 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 tap. I sat up in bed, staring at the closed curtains. The tapping continued for nearly a minute before stopping abruptly. Against every instinct, I crept to the window and slowly pulled back the curtain. A face stared back at me. I screamed and stumbled backward, tangling in my sheets. When I looked again, the window was empty. But I'd seen it clearly, a pale face pressed against the glass, features indistinct but unmistakably human. The eyes had been dark, hollow. The mouth slightly open. I called 911. I need to report someone outside my building. They're somehow accessing the fifth. Glass began to vibrate. I backed away, still recording, as cracks appeared in the window, thin spider webs spreading from where her knuckles struck the glass. "Stop," I shouted. "You can't come in." She pressed both palms against the window. More cracks appeared. The glass bulged inward slightly. Then she spoke, and somehow I heard her clearly despite the barrier between us. "Please, I just want to go home." Her voice was hollow, echoing, like it came from a great distance. "Where is home?" I asked. She pointed downward again. 15 floors. I fell. Understanding hit me like ice water. I ran to my laptop and searched the building's history online. It took 20 minutes to find it. A news article from 3 years ago. Woman dies in fall from downtown high-rise. Janet Holloway, 43, fell from her 15th floor apartment window yesterday evening. Police report no signs of foul play. Building residents say Ms. Holloway had been acting erratically in the days before her death, claiming someone was trying to break into her unit. I looked back at the window. Janet was still there, palms pressed against the glass, waiting. "Janet?" I called. "Is that your name?" She nodded. "You lived here before me?" Another nod. "You fell from this window?" She pressed her face closer to the glass. "Was pushed." The words chilled me. "Who pushed you?" "Maintenance man. Came to fix the window. I wouldn't let him in at first. Finally opened it." She gestured to the window latch. "He said I was crazy. Said no one would believe me about the break-ins. Pushed me out." I checked the article again. Janet had reported several break-ins before her death. Police found no evidence. Neighbors confirmed she'd seemed paranoid, claiming someone was entering her apartment and moving things around. What happened to him? The maintenance man? Still here. Still has keys. Still comes at night. Her voice grew urgent. "He's in the building now. Coming for you. Heard you calling security, calling police. You're just like me." My blood ran cold. "What do you mean?" "The knocking, it wasn't me the first 2 nights. It was him. Testing the window. I was trying to warn you." I heard a sound from my hallway, the soft beep of someone using a keycard on my front door. Janet's eyes widened. "Don't let him in." Footsteps in my living room. Slow, deliberate. A man's voice called out, "Building maintenance. Got a report about a window problem." I'd never called about a window problem. I tried to warn the others too, Janet whispered. But they never listened. Never opened the window to hear me. The footsteps were approaching my bedroom. Open the window, Janet urged. Let me in. I can help. Ma'am? The voice was right outside my bedroom door now. I need to check your window. Safety issue. My hand hovered over the window latch. Janet nodded encouragingly. The door handle turned. I flipped the latch and opened the window. Cold air rushed in, and with it, the overwhelming sensation of falling, but upward, not down. Janet's cold hand grasped mine as she pulled herself through the window. The temperature in my room plummeted. Thank you, she breathed. The bedroom door opened. A large man in a maintenance uniform stood silhouetted in the doorway, holding something metallic. He saw the open window and swore. You're not supposed to, he began, then stopped. His eyes went wide. Janet stood beside me, no longer pale and hollow. She looked solid now, real, angry. Hello, Tom, she said. His face went white. You're dead. I made sure you were dead. Death doesn't always stick, Janet replied. Not when there's unfinished business. He turned to run, but the bedroom door slammed shut on its own. The lights flickered. When maintenance found Tom the next morning, he was hanging halfway out my living room window, 15 floors up. Heart attack, they said. Probably from fear. Janet was gone by then, but she left something behind, a sense of peace in the apartment that hadn't been there before. I still live here. Sometimes at night, I hear gentle tapping on my window. But now I know it's just Janet, checking in, making sure I'm safe. I always wait. And sometimes, just sometimes, I swear I can see her wave back from somewhere beyond the glass, finally at rest.
My husband and I have been playing a game of tag for 5 years, but the rules have turned him into something terrifying. It all started after we saw the comedy film called Tag in 2018. For those of you who are unaware, it's based on a real story about a group of friends who played an endless version of the children's game. I think I enjoyed the film at the time, but I can't remember now. After years of this gradually worsening hell, I shudder every time I remember the concept that inspired my husband, Elliot. Let's do it, he said. Sorry? I replied, smirking. Right here? No. He laughed, rolling his eyes. Not that. Tag. A never-ending game of tag. We live in the same house, so I mean, it probably wouldn't be as thrilling as the film. I said. We'd just end up sitting on the sofa, constantly tagging each other in a back and forth slapping match. Elliot pondered on my point, tapping his lips thoughtfully. He was always a passionate person. Once he became hyper-fixated on something, it was hard to deter him, and I loved watching his face scrunch up as the cognitive cogs whirred away. But this time, my amusement at his fixation would be short-lived. Okay. Elliot eventually said, as we hopped into the car. We could make the game interesting. Only one person can be tagged per day. The game pauses until midnight. Texted Elliot to ask when he'd be home. He responded that he was sleeping at the office to avoid being tagged. And when he didn't show up the day after, I told him that tag might cost us our relationship if I were never to see him again. His response infuriated me. Nice try. Ultimatums won't work. I don't want to be it. When I told him that he'd better come home, his response sparked a ripple of shivers across my body. Oh, but I am home, darling. You just haven't seen me yet. Then I heard a slightest creak from the cupboard beneath the sink. When I opened the double doors, there was my husband. And ordinarily, that would have been a funny sight, wouldn't it? Just a game of tag that had reached dizzying heights of ridiculousness. But you didn't see his face. That wasn't Elliot. Not my Elliot. Bulging, unblinking, bloodshot eyes, unhinged smile, frothing at the lips, that giggle. Ever since he suggested we play tag, the man I knew was gone. Throughout lockdown, given that we were living in such close quarters, the game did become slightly easier, but Elliot lost a piece of himself with every passing day. I tried to get him to hyper-fixate on something else. No use. Still, whenever one of us had been tagged and the game paused, my husband returned to his normal self. That was when I decided I was going to stop playing. It was the only way to get him back. So, Elliot tagged me, and I didn't return the tag on the following day. For months, things returned to normal. But then, one day, at a local restaurant, he brought up the topic again. Lisa, Elliot started. What?
I work at a motel. I think skinwalkers are staying here. If you're ever driving down Route 106 in Michigan and you see a sign for the Greenbrier Motel, you better just keep on driving, because there is something terribly wrong here, and the last thing I would want is for more people to die. I started working at the Greenbrier Motel a week ago. It wasn't a dream job by any standards. Night shift at the front desk, checking people in and out, doing some inventory in the back. I liked the peace and quiet though. As a little rundown motel on a stretch of isolated highway in Michigan, it gave me a lot of time to read and play computer games on the clock. It also helped that the owner, Frank, didn't seem to care I was a high school dropout with a rap sheet. But okay? My heart dropped.
I went on a camping trip with 5 of my friends including me. We keep on counting 6, I'm terrified. There were bright flashes of red in the sky. It's as if someone was waving around a flare light from space, faint but noticeable. We all made UFO jokes and laughed as we nailed our tents into the ground. I knew for sure that there were 5 of us. We have all been friends since early middle school and we're celebrating our high school graduation with this getaway camping trip. The flashes of red must have stopped randomly as we made conversation while fixing up our tents. Dave managed to put his tent together the fastest and told us he was going to find some branches for the fire. I remember how he had worked with me at the local gas station last year. We used to do the night shift together and it had made working at a desolate gas station much more fun than it was supposed to be. There was also Eric in the corner still reading his tent manual, fidgeting with his signature round glasses. I wasn't as close with Eric as I was with the others, but I still remember sitting with him in math class and copying his homework one time. Ava was also there talking with Sally, my cousin. Both had decided to team up and work on one tent at a time. I also have clear memories of them, hanging around at school in our usual places. In fact, I even knew Ava's younger brother as he used to beg to go with us wherever we went. I bring all this up because I'm sure that there were 5 of us including me and that I knew everyone in the group. So Dave had went to get some branches as we pulled out some foldable chairs and set them up around the fire pit. I remember feeling uneasy as the sun set and darkness began to consume the forest. The shadows of trees elongated around us as the minutes ticked by. Eric went to get a flashlight from his bag while we wondered what was taking Dave so long. He appeared soon after, the harsh rustling sounds of the bushes signifying his return. We were all buried in our chairs at this point, covered by our jackets. The temperature had dropped quickly and a slight breeze was beginning to pick up. "Geez, you guys weren't even bothered to pull out a chair for me," Dave said as he arranged all the branches in the pit. We had set up 5 chairs around the fire. I tried to rationalize the situation, but no matter how hard I focused, my head felt like it was underwater. I had perfect clarity up until that moment, but when I tried to focus on why 5 chairs were occupied when Dave hadn't sat down yet, my head seemed to just stop working as if something was reaching in and pulling out my thoughts. Instinctually, I felt even more uneasy now and I had placed why. The whole forest had gone dead silent. I looked around at the faces of the others and could tell that they had felt the same. Eric was fidgeting with his fingers, trying to scan around the group and spot the extra person, but it was futile. I scanned every face, each etched in worry and frowning in frustration except for. "It's all right, I'll get the chair myself," Dave said, breaking the silence and somewhat alleviating the tension. I got up and offered to help him. He looked into my eyes and nodded knowingly. We headed away from the fire pit towards the tents, but I kept my eyes glued on our group. "How many people are here?" I whispered to Dave as he looked around and realized that we had indeed only packed 5 chairs. In fact, every person had brought with them their own chair. They were heavy to carry and we wouldn't bring any extra needlessly. "There's 5, right?" "I mean, there's 5 chairs," Dave replied. His voice wavered as he spoke. "No, I just think maybe one of us forgot our chair," I said. My mind was struggling to address the issue head on and now sought to find rational excuses instead. I didn't quite feel in control of my thoughts. It felt like swimming in a dream, and if I tried to force myself to think about who the 6th person was, my head would begin to throb. "Yeah, that sounds about right actually," Dave said, relaxing and heading back to the group. When we walked back to the fire pit and circle of chairs, 2 chairs were empty. One for me and one for Dave. Everything was adding up now, even though we all agreed it wasn't before. Sally suggested we were all probably tired after the long hike to get here and probably just needed some sleep. She could have been right. We were all sleep deprived from waking up very early today to make it on time. Ava brought out the drinks. The whole 6-pack was emptied. We all moved closer to the crackling fire for warmth as we took sips from our cans and reminisced on memories of last year. Ava was in the middle of telling us about that one time she was home alone with weird things happening in her house when I got these sudden chills despite the pleasant warmth of the fire. What felt cozy and safe moments ago felt wrong now, all because I realized that there was a crucial detail I missed. "Who started the fire?" I asked, completely interrupting Ava in the middle of her story and breaking everyone else's immersion. Everyone looked momentarily annoyed until they realized they had no answer. Once again, fear. "Wasn't it you, Dave?" Eric asked. Dave shook his head. "I think the person standing behind Jenny did it," Sally said, looking over at me. I whipped my head around so quickly it hurt. My heart was pounding in my ears. There was nothing behind me except for the encompassing darkness of the woods. Staring at those tall dark trees behind me made me feel exposed. I felt like a lost bird in a vast field. "Wait, I don't know," Sally said. Her eyes had gone wide and she was shaking visibly. She continued to look around frantically as Ava moved over to her, placing her hands on her shoulders and trying to calm her down. "I think we should leave this place," Ava stuttered. "Yeah, something just doesn't feel right, but I can't put my finger on it," Dave said. "But it's so dark out in the forest now, we'd probably get lost if we leave now," someone else said. "Yeah, I think we should stay the night and leave as soon as we can tomorrow," Eric agreed. I tried to protest but realized Eric was right. The woods harbored an oppressive darkness within which navigation would be near impossible. "Let's not sleep in our separate tents just to be safe," Sally said. We all agreed. We only brought 1-person tents with us, but we could squeeze 2 if we tried. That way no one would be alone at night. Following this conversation, we all got up and made our pairs. I went with Dave and Sally like always went with Ava. Eric kept complaining that he didn't have a pair, but we reassured him he did. He wouldn't accept it. I feel like at some point we all realized that there were only 5 of us and suddenly we were all huddling up in the middle of the clearing. "Why do we keep thinking there are 6 of us here?" Eric asked. Sweat was dripping down his face despite the cold. We had nearly left him all alone on his own under the assumption that there was another person. My stomach turned as I squeezed my eyes shut and tried to mentally recap everyone here. My head throbbed, but I kept pushing it. There's me, Dave, Eric, Ava, Sally, and I was pointing at each of them as I said the name. I retched and emptied the contents of my stomach on the ground when I got past Sally. The left side of my head felt like there was a knife stuck in it. My vision was blurry. Dave held me up to stop me from collapsing, and we all wordlessly started to move towards the tents as someone put the fire out. Dave helped me into a tent while the four outside discussed what to do. I could only focus on snippets of the conversation as the excruciating pain beating against my skull came and went in waves. Sally had the brilliant idea of arranging 3 tents together so their openings faced together at right angles in a sort of U shape so we could sleep as close as possible and also limit the entrance to our tents. Dave was about to go to help as they worked outside, but I clutched his hand and asked him to stay with me. The tents took some time to arrange. I started to feel a bit better once everyone got settled into their tents. A quick head count confirmed there were 5 of us. Eric would have to sleep in his tent alone, but he was more comfortable with it since all the tents were very close now. Looking back now, I think he was just trying to put a brave face on for us. I regret that moment deeply, letting him sleep in his tent alone. He was always less integrated in our group and knew that none of us would pair with him. Just before going to bed, we all agreed to leave as soon as the sun rose in the morning. I remember taking one last look outside the tent into the forest before trying to fall asleep. The wind had picked up and the tree branches were swaying gently. Beyond our clearing was just pure darkness. It felt like the trees were closing in on me. With the faint moonlight illuminating our clearing, I turned my head to look over at the 2 tents we had left out and saw someone standing next to them. Despite the circumstances, sleep came quickly and easily. Ava's shrill scream woke me up in the middle of the night. Dave and I ripped our tent door open to find Sally and Ava looking into Eric's tent. We pushed them aside. Eric's sleeping bag was rolled up. He was still inside it. His head in the center, face contorted in utter agony. The rest of his body rolled around it with the blue fabric now dripping with dark blood. Dave zipped up the door of the tent. Ava was in shock. Her eyes had become glassy and unfocused. Sally was shaking her repeatedly, tears streaming down her face. Dave picked up his torch and yelled at us to get up and run. We left the campsite behind and entered the trail we had come from. The 5 of us huddled together, Dave leading in the front as he cast his weak flashlight over the path so we could see it. All we had to help us get through this 2-hour trail was a small white circle of light. Even the moon failed to illuminate our surroundings through the dense foliage. Ava tripped and fell, twisting her ankle. We came to a stop. Someone said they knew how to splint it so we could keep going. They dragged her into the woods instead. It happened too quickly for any of us to process. Sally was about to run after Ava when Dave held her back. She struggled and managed to free herself, running into the trees to follow the echoes of Ava's screams. I was about to run after her, but Dave held me by the shoulders and shook me hard. "We need to get out of here, Jenny, please," he said. I hesitated but jolted into motion again when Sally's voice was cut off abruptly. She had been calling out Ava's name as she ran after her. Dave and I continued to run down the trail, trying to get to our car so we could get out of here. There was nothing we could do. At some point there were 3 of us running on the trail, Dave and I shoulder to shoulder while someone followed us closely behind. "Dave, who's behind us?" I gasped. My heart was threatening to burst through my ribcage and my legs burned. He turned to look at me. Confusion transformed into fear on his face and then into rage. "You keep running," he told me as he produced a pocket knife from his pants. He handed me the car keys, which I nearly dropped. Then he turned around suddenly and jumped at whoever was behind us. I continued to run in fear as the sounds of a struggle grew behind me. I tripped and tumbled through the trail for what felt like hours. I didn't allow myself to stop. I almost cried when the trail ended and I walked out into the familiar car park. Not wasting a second, I ran to the car and started it up, accelerating out of that forest and onto the highway within mere seconds. I'm typing this post out at a rest stop. My phone has finally regained service and I've called 911 to try and explain the situation. I don't think they believe my version of events, but they sent a car my way regardless. As I wait, the sun is finally starting to rise. After I hit the post button on this, I'm gonna check why the person in my backseat has been so silent the whole time.
Scary story time while I react to store-bought slime. This slime is called Lemonade Scan. What? Stan. It's been so long, y'all. Hunter and his friends were planning a weekend getaway trip at this old lake. Now, there had been rumors that this lake was haunted, but of course, Hunter and his friends... Open. They didn't believe in any of that haunted talk, but y'all, I can't explain how these, like, sponges feel, but it doesn't feel like a regular sponge. Like, it feels like slime almost. It's like a squishy. Now, this trip was supposed to be 2 to 3 days max. I can't open it. But multiple people told Hunter not to go on this trip just because the lake is in a rural area and people wouldn't be able to get to him in time if something happened. But Hunter and his friends, again, did not care. Y'all, it said it's scented, but This just smells like regular slime. Oh no. Okay, y'all, it's not pokey. And it's not stretchy. Like, at all. What is this? A blob of nothing. Y'all have to forgive me, I am a little rusty, so I'm sorry if I'm not getting to the point quick enough. When Hunter and his friends arrived at this camp, Hunter felt a bit off, but he got in the water with his friends and they had a little fun. By this time, it was already, 10 p.m., and this is where a lot of the torture starts to happen, okay? Hunter starts to hear his grandmother call his name, and his grandmother isn't alive anymore. I'm gonna try my best to fix this slime, y'all, but I don't know. I think a little glue could help it. I did add these in there because it's like so cool. Now Hunter immediately jolts up when he hears his grandmother calling his name, and he notices that his tent bunking buddy wasn't in the tent. So he starts calling his buddy's name, and his buddy isn't answering back. At this point, he's scared because he knows his grandma isn't here anymore, and the fact that he's hearing his grandma everywhere around him is freaking him out. Hunter is scared out of his mind at this point because he could hear whatever's calling his grandma circle around his tent. I added water, maybe that could help. Hunter calls for his friends, but they're not answering. He's screaming at this point when the noises finally stop. He opens the tent, and there he sees it. About 20 feet away from his tent, he sees something tall and black with no eyes and a large jaw that's like hanging. And then he sees his friends, all of them lined up one by one, unalived, not here anymore. It didn't matter how loud Hunter screamed because no one could hear them. They were in the most haunted part of the forest. No one went over there. Everyone warned them and they still didn't listen. All night, Hunter heard that monster eating on his friends. And not only could he hear that, he could hear the voices of everyone in the forest screaming, crying. He could hear his grandma, and he started to go crazy at one point. Hunter didn't think he was going to make it out alive. And to this day, Hunter doesn't know how he did. He doesn't have an explanation. He just says he hopes people can believe him because his friends went missing in a popular national forest. People told him that it was haunted and they went anyway. This slime, if I had to rate it, I'd rate it a 2 just because I don't even know. Like, I can't even tell you why. This slime had so much potential though. I tried everything. I added more glue. I added water. The last thing I'm gonna try is lotion. Cucumber melon, because this is not scented, it lied. Okay. Do y'all think it's gonna work or no? Let's see. Oh, no. Now this looks more like lemonade, but oh my gosh, my camera's dirty. I'm sorry, y'all. It didn't work. It didn't work. So this is definitely a 1, actually. The only good thing about that slime was these little foam balls that aren't really foam balls. I don't even know what they are, but they look cool. Well, that's the end.
I was a regular on the chat rooms on the deep web back when I was a sophomore in high school. Literally every day for about 5 months straight. Before school, after basketball practice, and before bed. I was always on there. I'd chat with this one guy all the time because they seemed really cool. He'd always link me to funny videos. In about a month 3, it all changed. He would send links to weird rooms, then to dark live streams. So one day I was on a stream, and there was a lady chained to a bed and gagged. Then I clicked off of the stream, and I tried to click something else, then the mouse quit moving. It started to move by itself, and clicked back on the stream with the lady chained down. When it opened back up, the lady was still there, and a man with a potato sack on his head was on the screen. The potato sack only had one eye cut out, and that's all. There was a table that had a hacksaw, gun, and scissors with a shaving razor. The man spoke into the camera and said, "Pick one." Everyone picked the scissors and a razor. He then shaved her head. After that, he said, "Pick another one." And everyone picked a gun. He picked it up, held it to her head, while the woman was screaming, and then I gained control of the mouse and clicked off of it. I was thinking to myself, what am I watching? Then my mouse clicked on another stream.
It was the same man with a barrel with what looked like boiling water in it. I tried gaining control of the mouse, but I couldn't. Then I heard a different woman crying in the background. The camera then zoomed out, and on the screen I saw the barrel, a bat, and a flamethrower. Then the masked man asked which one. The chat was split between the boiling water and the flamethrower. The man then said, "I'll use both then." He rolled the crying woman into the side of the camera, turned the flamethrower on, and aimed it at the barrel. At this point, he had her chained to the wheelchair. The water in the tub was boiling out of control. She started kicking and screaming even more. The man called another guy in the room. They unchained her, picked her up, and threw her toward the barrel. The screen then went black, but I could clearly hear the woman screaming and splashing. For about 2 minutes, that's all I heard. Then it stopped. The screen then came back and it was focused on the barrel. The two men just stood there, staring at the camera, breathing heavily. And that woman, I don't know how to explain it, but it was a terrible sight. Then the stream ended. I closed out of everything and I sat there in silence for a while. Honestly, that wasn't my last time on the dark web because I honestly enjoyed it. There are a lot of people out there like me, more than you think. Be careful about going on the deep or the dark web.
I'm from the Philippines. This happened when I was 10 years old. Our class usually ends around 4 in the afternoon, but I return home usually either 4:30 or 5 p.m. When I got home, I got a glass of water, changed my clothes, and went outside to play with my friends. We usually play hide and seek, but as soon as we get tired, we just lay on the grass and talk about what animal we hate the most. One of my friends said, "I hate lizards." The other two responded, "I hate cockroaches because they're dirty." Then one of my friends turned to me and asked what animal I hate the most. I replied, "Frogs." He said, "Why?" I replied, "I just hate frogs." He said, "Okay." Then one of my friends started imitating the frogs, and we just laughed at him. Then one of my friend's mom called to get him home to eat dinner, since it was already late at night. So the four of us said goodbye to each other. Our house is not that far from where we were playing. It probably took 200 steps to get to our house. So when I got home, I heard a croak sound near my bedroom window, and I knew there was a frog, but I just ignored it. I went in the house and went to the bathroom to take a bath. After that, I ate my dinner as well. I asked my dad, "Where's Mom?" My dad replied, "She'll be late." I said, "Okay." Then my dad and I continued with our dinner. Then after eating, I brushed my teeth and I went to my room to sleep. Again, I heard a croak sound near my window, and again, I just ignored it. Just to let you know, the windows in my room are not covered with curtains, so I can clearly see the outside of our house. I glanced at the clock and it was already 1 a.m., and I thought, "Oh, Mom is already home." My only source of light was from the moon. I turned myself to face the window, and then my heart stopped, and I couldn't even move. I saw a human frog at my window staring at me, but I just pretended I didn't see it. I just watched that human frog with my single eye open, and that human frog was just standing there. After a minute, it started jumping, and I didn't know what to do. He jumped for 5 minutes like it was waving at me. After that, it stopped jumping and then walked away. And I fell asleep around 2 a.m. because I was bothered by that human frog that I had seen with my own eyes. In the morning, I went to the place where I saw that human frog jumping, and surprisingly, there was a very deep hole. This story happened to my mother when she was pregnant with my eldest sister. She was in her late 20s, and she and my father weren't on good terms. As a result of this, she had to stay at my auntie's house. Just a little detail on Auntie's house. It was at the end of the street, and beside it was a huge mango tree. People in the village believe that the tree was haunted because it has been there even before the village was constructed, and who knows its history. My mother didn't believe it and wasn't scared at all. She was staying in a room upstairs alone while her niece was downstairs. As my mother went to bed that night, she had this eerie feeling in her gut, but brushed it off, thinking she was just paranoid. She fell asleep as she was tired of carrying the baby around. She woke up to someone whispering into her face. That someone was whispering my father's name. His name is John. So she opened her eyes and was stunned to see a long-ass-legged creature right on top of her. According to my mom, he was very, very dark. He had messy blonde hair. He smelled very bad and he was wearing stripes. He was staring at her with his huge eyes, still whispering my dad's name, John. My mom screamed for my niece, and the creature ran out to the window and into the trees. Her niece came in, and my mother explained everything that happened. My auntie came home, and my mom explained the situation to her. My auntie laughed it off and told her she was being paranoid. But one day, as my auntie was in bed, she woke up and saw the same creature on top of her. She was creeped out as fuck and screamed. After this incident, my mom left that house and never came back. I just wonder what that creature wanted and why was he whispering my dad's name?
This happened to my friend Mary when she purchased a house. In 2016, it was December. The house which Mary lived in was a big house with a big living room. It had 2 big rooms. It had 1 basement, a big kitchen, bathroom, and toilet. Mary kind of felt very bad in the house because there was always a bad smell that come from the walls, but she didn't pay attention. After a day and night, she began to hear footsteps, like someone is walking. After that day and night, when Mary was about to sleep, all photos in living room fall by itself, and Mary couldn't sleep throughout the night after seeing this. After that incident, nothing happened. But after 2 weeks passed, Mary died. The cops searched the whole house, then they finally go to the basement and find a very horrible thing that gave them a froze, and found a big truth about the house that was very shocking. That who was the owner of this house did suicide after 2 weeks when he purchased this house. But he said before doing suicide that whoever will purchase this house will die after 2 weeks. Till now, hundreds of people have died living in this house after 2 weeks. The cops found dead bodies of hundreds of people. I really feel bad for my friend, and I still remember her. So, it was 5 years ago. I was a little 9-year-old girl back then. In front of my house, there was a big tree and a land that it was free back then. Right now, there is a house, so the tree is gone. The land was dirty. It had a lot of trash on it. In the summer, my mom would open the windows of my room at midnight so that the air could run freely in the house. In that moment, I was used to go and see outside my window at midnight. It was really strange because I would always wake up at 3:35 a.m. I would be watching the land in front of my house, and especially the big tree. I don't know why, but it was like the main element in the entire land, even if it was just a side. That midnight, I woke up at 3:30 a.m. I would approach the window as usual and see outside the window calmly while the wind run in my face freshly. I saw a black cat in the land. I don't believe that black cats are of bad luck. I didn't and I don't. I love cats, so I started to stare at the cat. Until something moved slightly its arm. I focused my eyes on that something that moved its arm. I was looking to a man-looking creature, but it was like 3 meters tall. And at that moment, I could see that his head was cut off. It had no head. I was shocked. I couldn't even move. Even my mother was in the same room, but I couldn't move or talk. I just remember that I turned back and started to walk into my bed. It was like if something was controlling me. I sat on my bed and started to see the creature. I could see it because it was a really tall thing. After like 5 minutes, I could recognize that it had a head. The strange thing here, and the proof that makes me believe that that creature wasn't a human are, number 1, he was a really tall man. Number 2, he was literally so thin, like if he starved for a year. Number 3, the street was illuminated by the lights. I could even notice the cat, but the man was completely like a shadow. I couldn't see its face. Number 4, I mean, who would be out at midnight in front of a tree doing absolutely nothing? So I remember taking my sister out of the room, telling her everything. She kind of believed me because when I took her to see the creature, there was nothing, just a black cat. My family didn't believe me, especially my father. He would just joke about it, saying that I was hallucinating. After that, everything went back to normal. Until like 4 months ago, I could feel someone watching me. And last night, while I was trying to sleep, this time I was alone in the room, I think heard someone enter into my room while whispering something, but when I turned back to see who or what was doing it, there was nothing. And now I am just hoping that none of this happens to me again and trying to ignore the feeling that someone is observing me. My name is Lisa, and my family loved to go on road trips. We were that family that never stayed put. We constantly traveled. But this is the most terrifying experience I've ever had. Let's just say we won't be going on road trips anymore. It started when we were driving somewhere, which I won't name for privacy reasons, and it was getting dark. The hotel we planned to go to was full, and everything else was hours away. My dad continued driving, looking for a place to stay, and we came across this old-looking inn. At first, nothing seemed strange, but when we entered the driveway, we were immediately hit with a foul-smelling odor. However, we were all exhausted and hungry, so we ignored it. We knocked on the door, and out came a family. The parents looked normal, like an average white family, but the daughter was extremely pale. Her parents were blonde and brunette, and her hair was jet black. But they invited us in, and we planned to stay for a week, as nothing seemed wrong. The only thing that seemed odd was that a room was locked, but we shrugged it off as some owners don't want guests looking through their stuff. I was 9 at the time, and so were the other girls. Another family came to the inn while we were staying there. So me, the inn's owner daughter, and the other girl decided to play hide and seek. The inn girl said she was the master at hide and seek, so me and the other girl were seekers, as we bet $20 we could find her. I also forgot to say that the girl had such a crackly and creepy voice. When she said she was ready, I got goosebumps. Anyways, we split up in hope to find her faster. A few minutes have passed and I found her. I was behind her and was about to scream, "Found you!" But I looked closer and something stopped me dead in my tracks. I froze. There was the inn girl, crouching down behind the corner of the wall holding a knife. Next to her was the other girl. She was dead. Then I realized she must have been waiting for me to do the exact same. Tears streamed down my eyes. I had to get out of there before she saw me. I quietly went up the stairs crying. Then I heard something that made my heart stop. The girl was at the bottom of the stairs, staring at me with wide eyes, smiling. I screamed and ran to the bathroom, locked it, and grabbed my phone to call the police. I was crying in the bathroom for a few minutes while the girl was pounding on the door. Then suddenly, I heard cop sirens and footsteps rushing away from the room. I noticed that immediately when the cops arrived, the owners of the inn ran away. I went downstairs and hugged my parents, told them what happened while the cops were bringing the girl's dead body away. I felt really bad for the girl's parents. I told the cops what happened and told them about the locked room. So I followed them to the room and they burst the door down. We were all hit with the same foul-smelling odor, and I froze when I saw what the cause was. Dead bodies, leaking with blood, were piled up in the room. Some were decapitated, and some missing limbs. We left the inn and we never went on a road trip again.
My name is Louis, and I live in Switzerland. This story happened 5 years ago during the winter holidays. It was an icy cold day and the snow was falling continuously, so we had to warm the house all day long with the firewood, putting it into the fireplace. My dad told us all the time that we should take care of the firewood. However, for the next days, we didn't do anything but just played Nintendo. Eventually, we noticed late around 9 p.m. that we had run out of wood. Dad got angry, so as a punishment, he sent me and my older sister to the local lumberjack who was famous in the area. His shop was located 1.5 kilometers away from our house. He was a really tall guy with a long beard and wore a black and white lumberjack shirt as a classic lumberjack. Anyway, at first he seemed very talkative. We ordered 2 bags full of wood, which were about 50 kilograms. He said, "Okay, hold on. It'll take about 15 minutes to cut and wrap everything." All of a sudden, my sister had to go to the restroom. He said that he would let her know where the toilet is, so she followed him. I was waiting for about 15 minutes, and then I noticed the place was silent. I saw neither my sister nor the man. I called my sister's name, but there was no answer. Then I got a message from my dad that if we bought the wood, then we should come home immediately. According to the local news, the police are looking for a serial killer in the village 50 kilometers from here. Dad also attached a picture, and unfortunately, he looked very similar to the lumberjack. My heart dropped. I wanted to scream, but then he came with the bag of wood suddenly. He was smiling, but I could feel that something was weird. He looked joyful. "Please, ask me where's your sister," he said and winked at me. "She's certainly not far away from you." Then I noticed the red stains on his shirt. I nervously opened a wood sack, and the pink hair clip of my sister came out. I was full of anger. I grabbed a wooden bag with all my strength and hit the man. He screamed and fell on the floor, and I pulled out my pocket knife and stabbed him. 2 or 3, many times. Suddenly, I heard a loud scream out of nowhere. "Stop, Louis!" It was my sister. "That was a prank!" She was crying. I couldn't think straight. My head was all messed up. What have I done? I killed the wrong guy. I dropped the knife and stared at his cold body. But then I recognized that I had no time. I knew that we had to get rid of this body quickly while we were still alone in the shop without employees or customers. So I quickly looked around and found a hidden room, which was locked. We kicked the door and pushed him inside. And we were about to turn on the light in the room to find a cover, but then what I found was a huge shock. The room was full of people who had been cut in several pieces, and the floor was covered with blood. The lumberjack was the real serial killer. We were so terrified that we quickly covered him with some fabric and then ran out of the shop. We ran home as fast as we could. My dad asked us what happened, but we couldn't tell our parents anything. Since that day, we always made sure that we keep enough wood before the heavy snow. I'm still wondering if the police found all the bodies at that shop.
This is a story about me, Teresa, and my best friend Sasha. We were such pretty girls growing up, so the boys were all over us, especially a boy named Aiden Cummings. He grew obsessed with us. We hung out every single weekend, and whenever we did, we always caught him staring in our windows. He was generally a weird kid, and he never had friends, so we felt bad for him. One day, our friends were hanging out, and he asked if he could come. We allowed him because we felt bad. We went to the park, which is a couple of houses away from us. We called it the Green Park. We were there for about an hour before we went back to my house. Everything was going fine, but he was being really suspiciously quiet. We were outside on the trampoline for a while, and he said he had to go to the bathroom,
so he went inside my house. After about 30 minutes, we got really concerned, so we went inside to check on him. What we saw is something I will never forget. We saw him watching my hamster blow up in the microwave. He put my hamster in the microwave while we were outside. It was the strangest thing I had ever seen, so I immediately told him to leave my house. I could not call the police because I thought it was a silly thing to do, but I didn't know what to do. Me and Sasha were having a sleepover. We saw a dude with a creepy mask outside my window. We were insanely annoyed because we clearly didn't want to be friends with them, so we called the police. At that moment, we noticed he was holding my cat by its neck and holding a knife near it. We were horrified. It was perfect timing when we heard the police sirens going off, and he dropped my cat and ran. We didn't hear anything from him for days, until we got notified that his parents were both brutally stabbed to death. Every night I wonder if the police hadn't arrived at that time, if we would still be alive to this day. Rip my hamster Queenie.
My mom told me about her old friend from when she was 12, and there was a boy she always used to hang out with, and they were great friends. Her friend lived with his dad only, and his parents were divorced, but she still lived in the city. Then one day he moved, and my mom never saw him again until she was 38. She found him on Facebook and she tried texting him, but he never responded. She texted one of her old friends she kept in contact with and told her that she found the guy they used to hang out with when they were little, and she said he never responds to my texts. And then her friend told her that he killed his mom and was on the run, so he couldn't get caught. He kidnapped her and took her to the woods and decapitated her head. He cut it off and put it in a bag and hid it in the dirt and threw her body in a lake. When my mom heard this, she went quiet and didn't text her friend. She all of a sudden gets a text from the guy, and he said, "Hey, sorry I didn't respond." And my mom said, "Hey, how is your family? How is your mom?" And the guy said, "Good, my mom is okay." And my mom was shocked, so she blocked him off of Facebook and reported him. And she never spoke to him again. She wonders what would have happened if her other friend didn't tell her about this, and her and the guy ended up meeting somewhere.
This is the most terrifying thing that has ever happened to me. I want to share my story with the world, now that I have closure. It all started a couple years ago when I was living with my girlfriend, who we'll call Sarah for the sake of the story. I remember we were both in the living room watching a movie. We usually did movie nights on Fridays, and it was my turn to select which movie we get to watch. I was personally a horror fanatic, so I chose a horror film. It was pretty late in the night when this occurred, so it really made the movie that much more intense. Sarah wasn't really into the horror genre, so you can imagine the kind of reaction she had throughout the movie. Midway into the movie, Sarah asked if I could walk her to the bedroom. I reply by saying, "Sure, after the movie's done."
You know I don't like horror. Please just walk me to the bedroom. I'm scared, Trevor.
We can leave when the movie's done. I sat through your whole movie last week, so it's only fair that you finish mine.
Please don't do this to me. I'm really scared, Trevor.
Quit being a chicken. I'm not leaving the couch till this movie's done.
I hate you!
Sarah angrily gets up and heads to the bedroom on her own while I continue watching the movie and mentally prepare myself for the argument that awaited me. About 10 minutes later, my throat begins to itch, so I decide to get a bottle of water in the kitchen. As I stood up from the couch, I get startled as I see Sarah standing in the darkness of the hallway. Sarah, you scared me. I thought you were in bed sleeping. Sarah just stands there with her eyes wide open, gazing into my eyes with her emotionless expression, almost like she was looking into the depths of my soul. I assume she was still upset about earlier, so I said, "I'll be waiting in bed," as I casually walk past her. As I open the bedroom door, I see Sarah laying in bed asleep. My mind raced with mixed emotions of confusion and absolute horror. I could have sworn I just saw her. I decide to peek outside the hallway, only to see nothing. This can't be real. I could have sworn I just saw her. I must be hallucinating. I just need to stop watching scary movies this late at night. I disregard what had just occurred and crawled into bed with Sarah. At 3 a.m. in the morning, I wake up to a loud sound which sounded like glass being shattered. I noticed Sarah was no longer in bed with me, which I found quite bizarre as it was very uncharacteristic for her to be awake at this time of night. I could hear weird noises coming from the washroom outside the bedroom. I cautiously get up and began to approach the washroom. I could hear Sarah in there. It sounded like she was talking to someone, or something. I opened the door, only to discover the most terrifying thing I had ever laid eyes on. I can see Sarah standing in the bathtub covered in blood. She had smashed the mirror and used the broken shards to lacerate her body entirely. She then began yelling the words,
"I hate you! I hate you! I hate you!"
Her voice was demonic. I was thoroughly convinced that this was not my girlfriend and that she had been possessed by some sort of evil entity. I stood there quivering, not being able to move a muscle out of shell shock. Sarah then pulls the shower curtain, unveiling a message on the wall which spelled, "I hate you," written in blood. My legs go completely numb as I collapse to the floor. Sarah then picks up a large piece of the broken mirror and yells one last time in her demonic voice,
"I hate you!"
She then pierces the shard across my chest repeatedly, stabbing and stabbing and stabbing. I remember seeing a bright white light as my life flashed before me. That's when I open my eyes and wake up to a movie playing in the living room. This isn't the horror movie I played earlier. It must have been a movie Sarah put on. I checked the time and it was exactly 3 a.m. I looked to my right only to see Sarah staring dead at me with a grimacing look. What's wrong, Sarah?
This is the third time you fell asleep to the movie that I picked on movie night. I hate you.
Sarah? Sarah?
It happened when I was 7 years old. There was a small wig factory in my neighborhood, and lots of hair was always rolling around in front of the factory. I could see lots of men and women busily carrying boxes into the car. In addition, mannequin heads were scattered around the factory, so I sometimes played with them, kicking like a soccer ball. However, at some point, the people who were busy working at the wig factory were not seen, and there were many days when the shutters were always closed. One day when I was walking by the factory with my mom, she looked at the closed factory and said, "They said wigs don't sell very well these days. I guess they're going to close the factory." A few days later, I was playing hide and seek with my friends in the neighborhood until dinner time. It was a long winter day, so it was already dark, and I, who was a tagger, couldn't find one of my friends. When I finally gave up, he showed up and said he was hiding in the wig factory. "How did you get in when the shutters were closed?" "When you go to the back of the door, there's a pile of boxes on the wall, and you can step on them and go in through the window. There was a shelf under the window, so you could step on it and come back out." I thought it was a good idea. And as soon as the next tagger was decided, I ran to the factory with one friend. It was very easy to step on the box and go inside, as he said. The moonlight came through the window so we could see inside the factory. Mannequin heads with wigs on them were lined on the shelves. Since they were all looking at the wall, we could only see the back of the mannequin's head. Now that I think about it, I would have been chilled to see all the black hairs, but it would have been no big deal for a 7-year-old who was just distracted by hide and seek. So me and my friend waited for the tagger, giggling with each other. But there was no sign of him when time went by. We eventually came out of the window again and decided to play one last game before going to dinner. I became a tagger again this time. After counting 10, I went around looking for my friends, and finally, the last two were left. I grinned and headed straight to the wig factory and shouted as I pushed my face through the window, I won't be fooled twice. I know you're there, so get out of there. I went to the window to find friends who didn't answer. And then I felt something different from before. One of the heads of the mannequins, which were all looking at the wall, was looking at me. The moment I made eye contact with it, I felt like my whole body was electrocuted, and my heart dropped because the mannequin had a torso, unlike other mannequins. I was so surprised that I started screaming and crying, but no one came to see me, as if they didn't hear me. The mannequin was constantly shaking from side to side, or moving little by little, spinning in place. When I came to my senses, I took the courage to come closer to it, and I could see its face was very pale, and the eyes were unfocused. It was an old man. He was hanging from the ceiling on the pillar next to the shelf, and his face and his body were facing me as the rope turned. Being surprised, I immediately left the window and ran home crying. I told my parents all the truth as soon as I arrived, and they also reported to the police immediately, feeling serious. My dad, who went to the factory, kept comforting me in case I was terrified and shocked. However, I ended up suffering from what happened that day as a nightmare for a fairly long time. Later, according to the conversation of the elders in the neighborhood, the wig factory was suffering from financial difficulties, and the owner of the factory, who was in debt because of it, eventually closed the factory that day and hung himself. And a suicide note was also found nearby. The corpse I saw for the first time in my immature days gave me a mental trauma. And after that, I could no longer watch the scene that people hang themselves in movies or dramas, even now. I moved into an apartment a few years ago. Our new house seemed a little dark, and it was still chilly in the middle of summer. And after moving into the house, my family conspicuously began to act a little strange. One day, my parents were in the living room sitting and watching TV, and something was weird. My dad was laughing with his eyes and mouth wide open. Ha ha ha, laughing like this. And my mom was giggling like crazy. However, I was very young at that time, so I would often copy that figure, thinking that was kind of play for adults. And another day, they would have a conversation lying down at the kitchen table. Should we go now? No, later. No, we should go now. Something like this. I began to get scared and decided to try some sort of exorcising spells that were popular in my elementary school at the time. It was a way to shout, "Go away, you lala," 3 times before going to bed. I know it's kind of childish, but anyway, it was one night after I did this a few more times. I was about to sleep, and as soon as I lay down after turning off the lights, my parents came into my room. I felt something was not good. Being scared, I was in my bed covering my face, and they sat next to my bed one by one. Dad sat in that narrow gap between the bed and the balcony door and whispered in my ear, "What was that? Why did you do that?" He kept whispering the same thing, and I had no choice but to pretend to be asleep with fear. Long after, I heard the door open, and when I opened my eyes to see if my parents had left, there was my mother. She was kneeling on my desk and smiling widely at me. Screaming, I ran out of the house on that road, fainted after a long run on the road, and was eventually found by the police passing by. After that, we had received help from our relatives and moved to a new apartment. One day, I had a nightmare while I was sleeping. Just realizing that I had sleep paralysis, I squeezed my voice and called my mother. And she immediately ran from my side. "Honey, are you okay?"
I replied to her, Take my hand. However, the left door opened suddenly, and I could see my wife was running toward me at that moment. She held my hand, asking if I was okay, and I felt a moment of anxiety, so I turned my head to the right with all my might. The woman who ran at me at first, she was not my wife, of course. She was looking at me, dancing strangely on the spot, and jumping beside me as if she got too excited. My wife soon turned on the lights. As soon as the lights came on, she disappeared from sight. Who was that woman? The woman in front of my window. It was the middle of the night. I was choosing my clothes for the next day's appointment. After picking out some of my clothes, I was looking at the mirror with them and suddenly heard a sound from the window. It was like someone clicked their tongue. When I looked at the window, there was a woman laughing with her face pressed down on the screen. I walked back in fear, quickly turned off the light. Then I woke up my dad, who was sleeping at that time. However, when we came back to the room, the woman was already gone. What's even scarier was that our house had its own yard, and it was on the other side of the houses in town. How did she get into our house and stand in front of my window? Whether she was a human or a ghost, I still have no idea who she was.
I'm 21 years old now. This happened to my uncle when I was around 9 years old. My uncle was living in our house and was staying at our vacant guest room up on the second floor. He's my dad's cousin, so he was really close to our family. My uncle was a morning person. He would always get up at around 4 a.m., drink coffee, and run morning errands around the house. He also told us that he could see and feel ghosts because he has a third eye. And to give you a little background on our house, it was the very first house that was built on our street. We could sometimes feel something moving around our house, especially at night, but we never really paid attention to it. One morning, my uncle woke up at his usual time, around 4 a.m. He left his room, which was right beside the staircase, saw my older sister, who was 17 years old at that time, going up the stairs with a cup of coffee in her hand. The weird thing was, he said that my sister was looking down and not showing her face the whole time. He greeted her with, "Good morning, and why are you up so early?" He said my sister just kept walking up while looking down and ignoring him. My uncle felt awkward as my sister just walked past him. He ignored it, thinking my sister was in a really bad mood. He thought she probably stayed up late studying or something. My uncle went down to grab a cup of coffee when he saw my mother in the living room, ironing some clothes. My uncle was confused about why my mother was up at 4 a.m. and ironing clothes. He tried to talk to her and asked the same thing he asked my sister. "Why are you up so early?" He noticed that my mother was wearing the same clothes from the night before she went to bed, so he knew it was her. To his surprise, my mother ignored him. My mother never ignored anyone, which is why he found it strange. My mother was just looking down as she kept ironing. That's when my uncle knew something was off. He knew something was very wrong here. He rushed back upstairs to his room, locked the door, turned off the lights, and tried to go back to sleep. He tried to forget about it, and woke up again a few hours later. It was around 10 a.m. in the morning when he talked to my mother and my sister about what happened. They said they were asleep the whole night, and they don't recall waking up at 4 a.m. My uncle was so shocked about what he had just experienced. Someone was copying my mother and sister earlier that morning. I was so scared at that time. I became so paranoid that I might feel or see something odd in our house, but I tried not to think about it too much. The night after that situation, my uncle woke up at around 3 a.m. He felt something at the end of his bed, and he saw a woman with long hair sitting there. My uncle froze for a while. He didn't know what to do. He was trembling when he said, "Go away!" My uncle hid under his blankets. After a few minutes, which felt like hours, he looked at the same spot where he saw the woman, and she was gone. My uncle slept with the lights on that night. After that experience, he thankfully didn't experience anything like it ever again. It happened 3 years ago. On Saturday afternoon, I was hanging out with my friends, Austin, Vincent, Charlie, and Bobby, while my parents were gone for the weekend. We were playing Battlefield 1 at Austin's house, chilling and having a good time. A couple of hours later, we got bored and had nothing to do. So we went for a walk on the boardwalk, talking about what our plans are going to be for the summer. Vincent said he'll be going to Los Angeles with his family for a month, and Charlie will be in Arizona for 2 weeks. For Bobby, he'll be in London for a month, and I was going to Ocean City for a week. After we had a small chat, Austin asked me if we could go to the abandoned hospital around here. Being frightened, I was thinking that it wouldn't be a good idea to go there. However, I didn't want them to think of me as a chicken, so I agreed and decided to go there, and so did my friends. The outside was getting dark. We got into my truck and drove almost an hour to reach that destination. When we finally got there, I parked my truck right just next to the entrance, in case anything happens while we're checking out the hospital. We slowly got inside the hospital. The hallways and other rooms were empty. At first, I thought it was a little bit creepy and chilly inside. About 20 minutes later, walking around, we suddenly heard something that made our hearts drop. It was the sound of a girl screaming, saying, "Help! Somebody help me!" Then I heard some guy saying, "Shut your mouth," with a rough voice. We decided to follow the sound. When we went all the way up the stairs and got there, the dim light was coming from the room. I told my friends not to move a muscle while I was slowly approaching and peeking through the room. And what I saw was just unbelievable. A girl was taped around her legs, arms behind her back, and even her mouth now. I quietly told my friends to come to the room. I didn't see the other guy, so we quickly approached her, releasing the tape around her. "Thank you, guys," she said. "What's your name and what happened?" I asked her, and she replied, "My name is Hannah. I was kidnapped by a man 3 weeks ago while I was coming home from college." Then I asked again, "What does he look like?" "I think he's mid-40s. He has black hair and he's chubby looking." She replied back, and after she gave me the details, we decided to help her escape and get back to my truck. However, we saw a movement suddenly coming from the stairway with a lighting candle. Fortunately, we found an empty dark room at that moment and hid there. And not long after, I could see a figure wearing a flannel shirt, jeans, boots, and came into the room. He was holding a big machete. I was positive that creepy man was the one Hannah was talking about. After the man passed the room where we were hiding, we got out of the room quietly without making a sound as possible as we could. We were about to get to the exit. All of a sudden, a loud scream was heard from upstairs. "You! Where the heck are you? I'm going to kill you!" My heart pounded so hard. We had no choice but just to make a run toward my truck as soon as possible. All of my friends jumped in the back of my truck, and then I quickly started the engine. As I started the engine, Austin gave a big shriek. "Holy shit, Matt! Get the heck out of here right now!
I then looked behind us, and there he was. The guy was chasing after us with his big machete in his hand, and I quickly drove off. While one of my friends called the police, we pulled up at the gas station waiting for the cops to show up. They arrived in about 10 minutes. We told them exactly what happened tonight, and after we informed them where the hospital was, they went over to investigate the case. They eventually caught the man soon. He was taken into custody and after that got charged with kidnapping and attempted murder. After the police took him away, they told us they'd been searching for this man for 5 years. They also told us that he had prior convictions from the past of raping women and other kidnapping charges. And the poor Hannah. The ambulance took her to the hospital, and then we all came back to our house. After that day, we decided to never go to such places like that again. I still can't stop thinking about what would have happened if we failed to escape. Also, what would have happened to Hannah if we didn't show up? We all might be dead. I will never forget that night.
This story happened when I was 18 years old and a senior in high school. It was an ordinary night. My dad worked the night shift, so we all decided to sleep in my parents' room. I was with my younger brother, who was 15 years old at the time, my younger sister, who was 11 years old, and my mom. My parents' room was a small, purple, square-shaped room, which also had a bathroom. The bathroom's door was across from the bed. My younger brother and I slept on my parents' bed while my mom and my younger sister slept on the floor. Before sleeping, we all had a short conversation, and after that, we went to sleep at 9 p.m. At 2 a.m., I was awakened by a strange sensation. As I opened my eyes, I had my eyes fixed on the bathroom door, which was cracked open. To my surprise, I noticed a black figure, which looked exactly like my younger brother. The figure stood there with his arms crossed, watching me. However, his eyes were shut. At that moment, I froze. I couldn't move from the bed, and I was scared that if he opened his eyes, he would have red or bloodshot eyes. I decided to quietly turn my head to the other side of the bed to see if it was indeed my brother. My heart sunk to my stomach when I realized that my brother was sleeping right next to me. So many thoughts kept racing through my head. Who is this person? Why is he here? How could he look exactly like my brother? I tried as hard as possible to sleep and ignore what I saw. A few minutes later, after opening and closing my eyes, I was shocked to see that the figure was now standing above me, still looking right into my eyes with his eyes shut. My eyes were wide open from the shock. I felt like I was going to die from a heart attack. I felt as if he was starting to open his eyes, which scared me and caused me to close my eyes and force myself to sleep. Forcing myself to sleep worked, and the next thing I knew, it was morning. When I woke up, I headed to the living room and saw my mom. After holding it inside for a bit, I gave up and told my mom about the incident. I almost froze when she said she saw the same exact figure and witnessed what happened. It was terrifying. We both saw the same black figure that looked exactly like my brother. It was as if he was my brother's twin. We lived in that house for 2 more years until we finally moved out. After the move, we told my dad about this story because he doesn't like hearing creepy stories, so we kept it a secret until we moved. He surprised us by saying that we were not alone. He saw some strange things in that house as well.
This is the first time I've told this story in a manner like this. Now, I'm not a native English speaker or writer. I live in Brazil, and my family do not have anything extraordinary about them. My dad's an engineer and my mother is a psychologist. I'm 30 now, but this story occurred when I was maybe 10 or 11, sometime in that gap. It was the period of school break. Here it occurs in the middle of the year. So me, my cousin, who was a little older, maybe 13, and her brother, who was the same age, went to our grandparents' house. They lived in the countryside. They live in a state called Minas Gerais. We went to stay for about 7 days. The first 6 days were perfect. Not too cold, not too hot, the relaxing sound of animals, the fresh smell of coffee every day, that delicious farm food that my grandma did so well. A true paradise for a child. And then the night of the 6th day. I'll never forget that. The sounds, the sensations. For some reason, that day I was having trouble sleeping. My cousins were already fast asleep. I decided to walk to the kitchen to get a cup of water or something to drink. With luck, we would have some Coca-Cola in there. When I made it to the kitchen, I found my 2 uncles, who lived on the farm ground to help my grandparents with all the farm things and all that. They were talking about something. When they saw me, they smiled and continued their conversation. I don't remember what they were talking about, but it was lighthearted. Then one of them closed the door. I saw that there was an enormous quantity of locks on the door, including one that was a wooden bar that was placed horizontally over it. I didn't say anything, I just grabbed my water, then drank it before going back to our room. Later on in the night, I was awakened by the sounds of loud voices. I looked around a little lost, and I saw my cousin holding her sister in his arms. She was crying a lot and said,
"You hear that, Matthias?"
when she saw that I was awake. I then heard one of my uncles screaming, "It's coming back!" Soon after, I heard the first gunshot I'd ever heard in my life. I think it was a hunting rifle. I'm not a weapons guy, so I don't know the type. I nearly screamed. Then one of my uncles went into the room, a rifle in his hands. He saw us and seemed relieved. He smiled, but before he went back, he told us, "Stay away from the windows." And we did just that. For the next hour, I think, we 3 just got together and waited. I swear I remember the sound of something big circling around the property. It reminded me of when a dog walks, the sound of 4 legs hitting the ground. The sound of heavy breathing came really close to our window. Then there was a bang. My cousin screamed, and my uncle came into the room and led us to the kitchen. He never lost sight of that window, training the gun there. Then there was nothing. Just dead silence. We slept in the kitchen, and one of my uncles stayed awake all night with us. In the morning, all seemed like a bad dream. But then I went out because I loved the smell of grass in the morning, and I saw these huge claw marks on the outside of the door. They looked 6 centimeters wide, enormous, and these huge dog-like footprints were around the house too. I asked the uncle that took us out of our room, and he said to me, like it was normal, "Well, this is our life here."
One late night, I was walking along the path with my friend. Suddenly, I heard someone from behind us speaking quietly. "Don't look back. Don't look back. If you look back, if you do that." I stopped in amazement. There was silence for a few seconds. And behind me, I could hear something ripping and a groan of pain that I don't know whether it was an animal or a human. Being seized with fear, I clenched my teeth to stop my instinctive curiosity to look back. However, when I took a peek at my friend Ken, he who seemed couldn't resist curiosity, has been already looked back. Ken, who thought someone was fooling around, was smiling and looking around to see who it was. Although we couldn't see around it because it was dark already, he seemed to think it was no big deal. Just then, I heard someone scream, "If you look back, you are going to die!" Something flew in and stuck in Ken's body, and a moment later, he fell to the ground groaning. The knife was stuck in his leg when I looked at him in extreme fear. He screamed and shouted, Don't look back! Run! I grabbed his arm and ran away like crazy. I heard a chasing sound from behind, but didn't have the courage to look back though. I'm starving. Give it to me. The man shouted, and when I glanced back, I could see him laughing, bleeding from his mouth, and following us like a mad, holding a knife in his hand. Ken, who was limping at that moment, was soon caught by him. To my surprise, he grabbed Ken's leg and tried to cut out the flesh with a knife. It was like he was cutting steak something. I kicked him as hard as I could, and he was eventually knocked out. We barely managed to escape and were able to get away from him. We hid somewhere and ended up calling the police. Soon, there was the sound of a police car. I took a look at Ken's condition, and his leg's flesh was torn apart. When I asked him what had happened, Ken then replied in pain. The moment Ken looked back, he saw a homeless man who was eating something alive raw. And that man threw the knife he was holding at Ken when he met his eyes. The police later arrested him and also found a man whose flesh had been torn apart from his entire body. It turned out that man was eaten alive. Barely breathing, he eventually died on his way to the emergency room. The victim, who was drunk, fell unconscious on the floor at the time and was eaten by a homeless man. I still can't forget Ken's deathly pale face. If I had failed to run away that day, I might be lost some part of my body too.
I used to live in this small, sleepy forest town, which at the time was notorious for being the most boring place to raise a family in the Midwest. That never bothered me very much. I liked the isolation and the privacy, and the knowledge that those late-breaking violent stories you hear on the news would never involve us. I lived about a minute away from a large open field, where I could easily walk for about 15 minutes without ever having to set foot on concrete. One day last summer, I was taking my dog Oscar for a walk across the field, pretty early in the morning as I usually did. But today, something happened to catch my eye immediately after I went through the fence. About 15 meters to the left of the entry gate is an old fishing pit that was surrounded by overgrown bushes with barbed wire. So I heard something rustling from the undergrowth, and I stopped to investigate. I noticed the outline of someone standing under the shadows of the trees, staring at me without moving. Completely taken aback and slightly unnerved, I decided to just keep walking my dog as if I hadn't seen anything. I usually play music on my phone, but after that chilling encounter, I had no intention of doing so, just in case that person decided to try and come at me from behind. After walking for another 15 minutes, I completed my loop around the field and was making my way back when I noticed a tall man walking from the grassy area around the fishing pit to the gate. It was hard to tell because of the distance, but I would say he was around 30 years old and well built. I made sure to keep my distance and decided to play fetch with my dog for a while and give him time to leave, as my gut feeling was telling me that it wasn't a good idea to approach him. After a short while, I made sure the coast was clear and called my dog back over to me and reattached his leash. As we were making our way out of the field through the gate where we originally entered, Oscar started pulling at his leash and sniffing around the bushes where I had first noticed the silhouette of the man. I tugged at the leash and called my dog's name, but he refused to obey, which was strange because he usually didn't give me any trouble. I walked towards him to grab his collar, nervously scanning the area again for the strange man, when I noticed a piece of blue cloth on the other side of the barbed wire divider that surrounds the fishing pit. I tied my dog to a nearby stump, carefully climbed over the fence, and went to investigate. This next part is very difficult for me to recount, because while a part of me is pleased my actions that day brought light to a violent crime, and brought closure, however horrific, to someone's family. Another part of me wishes I had just been less patient and kept tugging at my dog, because the nightmares have yet to stop. There was a body of a young girl covered in bruises all over her face and lacerations to her wrists. Fresh blood was pooling under the gash in her neck. Her eyes were all puffy, like she had been crying for a very long time. I couldn't even begin to imagine what she had been put through. After calling the police, I sat by the gate and waited what was probably only about 8 minutes, but it felt like a lifetime. Even though I obviously knew she was dead, when I overheard the ambulance attendant confirm it, I threw up all over the grass. The police tried asking me questions, and I told them what I could recall about the stranger, while my dog whined and tried to nuzzle me while I sat on the grass. A week later, I read in the newspaper that the young girl was a 12-year-old named Megan that had gone missing no more than 5 minutes away from my house. She had been sexually assaulted before being murdered. After 3 months of continuous searching, nobody matched the vague description of the man I had given the police. More than a few times, I've noticed people in my own town giving me sideways glances that feel more like suspicion than pity, and that's almost more than I can bear. Please just remember to keep things in perspective, no matter how shitty a day you're having. However many trivial inconveniences you have to endure, you were at least lucky enough not to have found a dead child while enjoying your daily routine. My thoughts and prayers go out to that poor girl's family.
My name is Skylar, and this happened to me when I was 12. It was a Saturday afternoon. My cousins were staying with my family over the weekend. My parents had to head over to the store, and my cousins and I decided to go to the nearby park to play. Before we left, we made sure the door was locked like we were supposed to. However, by the time we came back, I could see the door was open. There were even scratch marks on the handle, as if someone had tried to pick the lock by force. My older cousin Sam called my parents, and they said they were on their way. Stupidly, we thought the intruder had left already, so we ended up going into the house. That was a mistake. My younger cousin, who was 9 years old at the time, had to go to the bathroom, but when he stepped out, his face was frozen with fear. We asked him what happened, but he couldn't speak at all, just pointed at the bathroom. I slowly opened the door, and what I saw made my heart drop. A blood-soaked man was dead in the bathtub. I checked if he was breathing, but couldn't feel anything. It looked as if someone had attacked him. My cousins and I started panicking, realizing that there must be a second intruder somewhere in the house. We cowered together in the living room and waited for my parents. When they finally arrived, they called the police right away. During their investigation, they found out that those two men had escaped from a mental hospital nearby. It turned out that they were both trying to rob my house, when one of the men lost his mind and ended up killing the other. From that day on, my parents never dared leave me home alone. I always double-check the door before I leave. Now I'm 15 years old, and my family has moved to Florida. However, I don't think I will ever forget the memory of that dead man in our bathtub.
About 2 years ago, I moved into a new apartment. The walls were very thin, and because of the fire safety laws in my city, my bedroom had one window which led into the living room and none with outside access. The window will be important later. It was 3 bedrooms, one for me, one for the master tenant, and one spare, which at the time was rented out by a pretty friendly guy. Well, friendly guy had issues with his work visa and had to move back to Canada last minute, leaving us about 2 weeks to find another roommate. Our quickest and easiest option was Craigslist. Due to my work schedule, I had no part in the selection process, but was content when the new roommate moved in a little later. He seemed a bit off, but friendly. He was a very tall, large guy, but pretty quiet, and not someone I wanted to go out of my way to hang with, but was okay to be around and be cordial with. About 2 weeks into his move-in, the master tenant left for Hawaii, leaving him and I alone in the home for the month-long duration of his stay. For the first few days, things are normal. All of a sudden, about 4 days into the trip, I am woken up at about 8 a.m. to a frantic knocking at my door. Roommate, we'll call him Kyle, is standing there when I open up, looking frazzled. He looks me dead in the eye and says, "So, do you want me to tell you what went on last night?" To which I was shocked and confused, because I had come home from work at about 9 p.m. and immediately showered and went to bed. I explained this to him, and he tells me that he heard me screaming and arguing with someone in my room, that he saw me in the side alley out the window arguing with our landlord, whom I'd never even seen at that point, that he heard people coming in and out of our house. I tell him no way, none of that ever happened. After staring at me for a little longer, he leaves and doesn't bring it up again. The next morning, I wake up to the same thing. This time he says he saw me arguing with my boyfriend. I was single at the time, had seen me talking with our other roommate, who's in Hawaii, and asking me for the badge number of the officer I'd spoken to, since he had apparently seen me talking to a bunch of police as well. This time I get angry and more or less tell him to cut this shit out because I'm not doing anything and don't know what he's talking about. He gets a weird look on his face and says, "I think I had a seizure in my sleep. The next time it happens, call an ambulance," and leaves for a bit, only to start knocking again about an hour later, and when I open up, Kyle repeats the exact same story verbatim. This happens once more before I tell him to leave me the fuck alone and leave for work. I go to work as normal, and I'm reluctant to return that night, but I'm too tired to switch to an alternate location. Big mistake. About 1 a.m., I wake up to slamming doors. Kyle is pacing back and forth between his bedroom, the living room, and out the front door, walking in and out of each room, turning the lights on and off, mumbling angrily and slamming the doors. I can see his figure pacing back and forth through the frosted window in my room that leads to the living room. Since my room is dark, he cannot see inside. Suddenly he screams, "I can't live like this. Why are you doing this to me?" I think he's on the phone and don't respond. A few minutes later, he screams my name repeatedly, and I realize he's directing it towards me. I knew I had to get the fuck out of there, so I very quietly creep out of bed and start getting dressed and packing a bag of clothes for work in the morning. I am almost done when he screams, "I hear you," and charges over to my room, slapping the wall next to my door but not touching the door itself. I look towards my window and see his shadow lean all the way forward, pressing his ear against the glass. I was fucking terrified and sat completely still, unmoving. He eventually screams my name again and moves away from the window, and I hear him start pacing between rooms again. Now, my shoes are kept on a rack outside my door and not inside my room, so I know that when I leave I'm going to need a moment to put them on. I decide to wait until his pacing takes him out the front door again, at which time I plan to grab my shoes, put them on, and run. As I'm formulating this plan, the pacing stops. He screams, "Do you want to fucking fight about this? Come out right now and we'll fight, I swear to God." I'm very small, 5-foot girl, and this guy is easily 3 times my size, so I'm definitely not looking to fight, thanks. After a few minutes, he turns off all the lights, and I hear the door to his room open and close, followed by silence. I wait for a moment to be sure I can't hear any movement, and then decide to take my chance. I took a breath and pulled my door open quickly. I step out and grab my shoes before I look up a second later and see him standing shirtless, with just a pair of boxers and sock on, in the dark of the hallway, his arms slightly outward in an awkward position. He says in a low, calm voice, "Ma'am, we need to talk." That was a hard no from me, so I grab my shoes and run out the door with them in hand. I run about half a block barefoot before I stop to put them on. When I look back, he is standing in the porch light of our front door, watching me run, but not moving. Luckily, I had a friend who lived 2 blocks away, and I had their spare key, so I let myself in and crashed there for the night. And that's where I stayed for the next week or so while we worked out things with the master tenant, and Kyle agreed to move out within the week. He says he doesn't remember anything that happened, or wasn't sure if it was real or not, but if I said that's what went down, then it must be real. The day Kyle left, he sends me a photo of the house keys sitting on the table and says, "I'm out." Nothing else. I take a friend over there with me to scout it and ensure that he has actually left. When we get there, we discover that not only had he left a ton of food and furniture, but he had ripped all of the fire alarms out of the ceilings. He had unscrewed and removed the deadbolt to the front door and left them lined up neatly on the front table. We then realized that my front door can only lock by using a key from the outside, and that it had been locked when we arrived, meaning Kyle still had a key. We called a locksmith immediately. Even after changing the locks, I was still terrified to stay there alone afterwards and never went to sleep at night without barricading the doors with chairs and other furniture. To this day, I still fear for his safety. He was obviously psychologically unstable, but also wonder what could have happened if I hadn't been as lucky as I was.
My name is Flora, and I'm going to tell you a story about what happened to me 2 years ago. It was my senior year of high school. Everything was going well, and my school results were decent. I got along with my classmates and often talked to everyone. Well, everyone except this one boy who always kept to himself. He was just always drawing quietly in his seat at the back of the class. Everyone took his behavior for shyness, and no one usually talked to him. In fact, I was one of the few who had tried to make him come out of his shell, but he just royally ignored me. For a while, I gave up on the idea of dragging him out of his fortress of loneliness, figuring that he must just have preferred his own company. Then one time, I ran into him in the hall, where he was sitting, and of course drawing into his sketchbook. I decided to give it one more try. "Hi, what are you drawing?" I asked him. As usual, he didn't answer to me, or even acknowledge my presence. He just kept drawing with a blank expression on his face, calm and emotionless. After waiting a while, I ended up leaving him alone. A few days later, I spotted him at the metro station on my way home. The station was pretty empty. There were 3 people there. Me, a man probably in his 40s sitting cross-legged on a bench with his little briefcase, and my mysterious classmate carrying a big sports bag. This time, I chose to not try and talk to him. I didn't feel like getting ignored once again. When the metro arrived, we all got on the same car. What struck me immediately was the stench. Not the smell of sweat or anything. It was more like rotten meat. It's a smell I will never forget. The expression on the 40-year-old man's face clearly indicated surprise and disgust, so I concluded the source of the smell had to be my classmate, or rather his gym bag. I wanted to get a little bit further, to put some distance between myself and his smelly bag, as quickly as possible. Suddenly the man in the suit said something that stopped me in my tracks though. "Young man, what is that dripping from your bag?" Small red drops were beating on the base of the bag before falling to the ground, gradually creating a puddle. I started to break out in cold sweat, but had no idea how to react. My classmate remained silent, ignoring us both, just as he always ignored me. No one spoke again until the ticket inspector stepped into our car to check our tickets. He also noticed the bottle of red under the bag and hurried to remind my classmate that food was prohibited on the metro. "You're going to have to open your bag," he said. My classmate hesitated, but then slowly began to open the front pocket of the bag. And before any one of us could react to it, he started brandishing a big kitchen knife in our direction, still in complete silence. Luckily, the inspector and the middle-aged man managed to disarm and subdue him quickly. They then asked me to call the police and tell the driver, which, of course, I quickly did. About 10 or 15 minutes later, the police arrived at the next station, where we were waiting. They took my statement and opened his bag. Inside, there were 2 human hands covered in blood. It was horrible. The image is still imprinted in my memory to this day. Later, I learned that my classmate had severe psychological problems, and he continuously drew hands in his sketchbook. I still visit a psychologist, trying to forget about this incident, to not think that I could have lost my hands, or worse, and above all, to forget that this boy was my classmate.